Stage 13 of La Vuelta, 171 kilometres a day, destination Montilla. And despite what it looks like upon the screen at the moment, there is plenty of altitude gain today. They have quite a bit of climbing. Over 1,700 metres, in fact, has to be dealt with. And particularly of concern will be the ramps at the end of today, where the last 650 metres feature a 150 to 200 metre stretch of 7%. So that's no laughing matter if you are a delicate sprinter. If you're one of the hard men, like Mats Pedersen, the man who wears the green jersey, you're going to have a lot of fun. Will Timberlier, just right inside of your screen at the moment in the Belgian tricolour, he's just disappeared. He will want to make something of a statement today for Alpes in de Koning. Not a suspicion that there may be another big breakaway yesterday, but to be quite honest, I think after such a punishing schedule yesterday, 32 riders up front, Carapaz ultimately getting victory, and of course Evenepoel making no difference to him in the overall, despite picking up some bumps and bruises out on the road, would have thought that the day, I think, possibly went rather well. This is Juan Ayuso, man who tested positive for COVID. But his viral load is so low, it seems his body has fought it off. And it may well have been that he was struggling with the dreaded virus during the time trial where he was complaining of blistering headaches. That's always a big sign. Well, he's riding on, but we do hope, Remco Evenepoel himself saying at the top of the day that when Peter Seri got ill, it was reflected far more seriously after a couple of days. So the illness kind of got hold of him. We're hoping that doesn't happen to Juan Ayuso, and the Spanish fans will be equally as prayerful, I think you might say, that he just stays where he is, because quite frankly he is a stunning performer at this race. He stays in 5th place with Wilco Kelderman just vaulting up into 6th place after being in the break yesterday. Jan Palance moving into the top 10, 9th after also being a major feature. It's not going to be the same way for the break today, however, because these guys, they're not troubling anyone. Vandenberg from EF Education in the pink, just on the left-hand side of your screen right now, just being highlighted for you. He was in the break on the days of Utrecht and Breda, the first road stages of this race, stages 2 and 3. A little bit of a break from the break, I guess you might say. But he does like to be in a breakaway on the approach to a rest day, and that's precisely what we've got at the moment. A weekend, of course, of racing, albeit shorter, 160 kilometres tomorrow and 148 on the big Sierra Nevada day, and plenty of climbing, of course, but all crammed into a very short run. Stay safe, everybody. Pick your lines through and make sure you don't hit a dusty patch, because that has been a wounding factor within this race. Okamika is here from Burgos, dead centre of this trio right now, and Johan Bull. All of these riders have been in breakaways, but it must feel like a short straw, Sean Kelly, for them to be up here today. We've got a bit of pace about it. It doesn't look overly stressed, but 2 minutes and 16, that's hardly a country mile, and it's just being moderately and mildly controlled by those who have an interest in today's sprint.
Yes, well, for the breakaway, it's going to be a disappointing one to have just 3 riders out in front. You know, they would have loved to have, 10, 12 riders and get to a point in the stage where they might be able to put the teams that want to control under pressure. But with 3 riders in front and this 2 minutes advantage, 2 minutes 13, it's really being held and controlled by the sprinters' teams. And you find yourself out in front, you're hoping that when you get out immediately out of the peloton, there'll be another group that come across of maybe 4 or 6 riders more, and then you can go on. But sometimes it's closed down, as we see on the days where we see from the start. Teams are controlling, they don't want to have too big a breakaway, and that is the sprinters teams, but also the GC team as well. They're watching to see who is going, and if there's somebody maybe not too far down the general classification, they try and not allow that move to go. So it ends up being a very small breakaway, and that's what we've got today.
Extraordinarily short. Let's hear from Theo Gegenhardt, shall we? He must have been delighted, as the rest of the team must have been as well, for Richard Carapaz's victory today, yesterday. What's he got for today? What's the plan?
About how it's going this Vuelta a España for you. Yesterday, a victory with Richard Carapaz. I think it must be always important for the morale of the team.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's really important for the team to win, and yeah, it's great to have some guys up there in the GC, but also winning is very important for us and the sponsors. So that's a box ticked, and we'll try to tick it again in the next 10 days or so. And yeah, it's a good day.
You've been in the team for many years already. This year, the team for La Vuelta is very young, so that must be also interesting, no? The approach of the race you are doing, the meetings, seeing these guys, learning something new every day.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent. I think the age doesn't necessarily mean inexperience, because Carlos and Ben have, both done a lot of races. Ben done an amazing first-year professional in the classics, and yeah, Carlos has done 2 years professional already. So, of course, it's their first time to do rest days and third week of a race, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, we are having a nice time, and it's a shame that we lost the 2 guys, but yeah, we're doing a nice race, and we're looking forward to the next week.
Sounds to me, Sean, like they've pared back, naturally, they've had to, their intentions for this race. Let's see what they get. They've got themselves a stage win now with Richard Carapaz. You kind of feel like it's the sort of team that may well offer some more stage wins, I mean.
Well, if Carapaz gets into the real good shape, and he is getting better as this race go on, and yesterday's performance was an excellent one, so there's a big change there, because in the earlier part of the race he wasn't at the level, losing time on stages that you would never expect him to lose time to the GC men, and yesterday getting into that break and proving in the end that he was the strongest. And after such a difficult day, he rode really well and rode very tactically, really good. Just waited, followed the rest, and then hit out when the time was right for him, and just got that gap in the jump away and held on to the finish. And he's going to be going for more. And yeah, for Ineos, they needed a stage victory, because where they are in the general classification, Carlos Rodriguez is still there in 4th overall. But in the final week, we just don't know how he's going to manage that one. The third week of a 3-weeker, it's a difficult one. If you haven't got the experience, you haven't done it before, well, then it could really start to hit you. And there's a lot of things that can go wrong. Fatigue can start setting in. Your focus as well, to keep that for 3 weeks, is a difficult one. So we'll have to wait and see. But Rodriguez is riding a brilliant race here at the moment, and they're hoping that he can continue to go on, because he is the man now in the GC standings, because Theo have slipped down. Yesterday again, he slipped off in the general. He lost another 28 seconds against the main rival. So yeah, I think Rodriguez is the man for the general classification, and the question is, will he be able to perform like he has been all the way to Madrid?
It's interesting, isn't it? Form and ebbing and flowing. You could almost apply that exponentially to Miguel Angel Lopez. Never really know quite what to expect from him. The teams themselves, for whom he rides, feel pretty much the same, I'm certain. Amazing, Sean. You talk about Carlos Rodriguez. Fantastic to see his form for such a young man, but Spain are doing really well. With Ayuso, notwithstanding the positive test that he's had today, 3 riders from Spain beyond the halfway mark of this race in the top 5, with Enric Mas, of course, still very much trying to elevate his status within the podium. At the moment, he sits on the 3rd rung of it. 3 minutes and 3 down, no change there. He'll hope to try and make some changes when it comes to the mountains. Movistar, certainly yesterday, they looked like they were battle fresh and battle ready, Sean, but weren't able to lay a blow on Evenepoel. But you never know how this race must pan out. It must be a joy to Spanish cycling fans that 3 in the top 5, as we said, that's a nice position to be in for Spanish cycling.
It is a real strong position to be in, and they will be hoping that it continues on all the way to Madrid. And Enric Mas, we did see Movistar yesterday pushing on the pressure after Jumbo-Visma started setting the pace in the earliest kilometres of the final climb. And yeah, they want to see if Evenepoel will show a little bit of weakness. And I suppose with the crash yesterday as well, they were just wanted to test to see was he suffering a bit from that, and not at all, because he just followed. And then when it came to the point, 2 kilometres or 2.5 from the finish, he started doing his usual, setting that pace on the front, and everybody just was able to hang on in there, and he just put a lot of riders out the rear. There was very few riders who could stay with the pace to the line with Evenepoel. So again, he proved that he is the man to beat in this race. And Mas is approved 3-weeker, and he wants to try and move also on the general classification, because with Roglic just up in front of him and with a slim advantage, he wants to try and take that time back again. He lost, of course, to Roglic in the time trial, but he wants to just slowly work on it and try and pull a couple of seconds back here and there on those mountaintop finishes. And Movistar will try that again, and in the meantime see how the red jersey is performing. But it's all going to be down to Saturday and Sunday stage. So we have two big ones, as they say in the Italian, big.
Yeah, they don't even use the word grande. Yes, today we're racing along the flat open plains, as you can see, with all the fruit groves to either side of the road. Get used to that, but we will be climbing a little bit later with the sprint. I do love a punchy sprint, Sean, and that's precisely what we're going to get at the end of today. It'll be a real battle up those ramps, but we have seen that occasionally the likes of Primož Roglic can actually get involved and start to mix it up. Is he going to have to start searching away from the high mountains for days like today, Sean, to find even modest seconds advantage over Evenepoel if they're offered?
Well, talking about Primož Roglic today, he's a one that nobody is talking about. But if it's a real fast run-in, and
exactly,
it's one where riders are under pressure, and when you get to that final number of kilometres, it does start to go up. I think it's around the 5 kilometres you start to just go up gradually, and from 4 to 2 it does go quite a bit. It probably goes up at 4%, and then from 3-2 to go, it's pretty a flat run in, and then when you get to the kilometre to go, it starts to go uphill, and that run to the line, 5%. If somebody drives it on at 5k out and really put a blistering pace, well, then you could see some of the sprinters, mouth open, gasping for oxygen. And that's
you
where
sound like you're relishing this, Sean.
And that's where Roglic, is the most dangerous. He could take advantage of that. So he's a one. And of course, the time bonifications as well. That's always an advantage to take a bit of time back. But for the GC, the real battle will be on Saturday and Sunday, and they will try and isolate Evenepoel from his teammates, and then see what they can do. And the riders further down in the general classification, they're the ones who will maybe try from a bit further out, and that's what they've got to do. They have to try from a bit of a longer range. If you allow Evenepoel onto the final climb, well, then he's going to be difficult to take any time from him, unless in the final week he could start tiring also. And Carlton, we've seen that in big tours. We've seen riders so performant in the first 2 weeks, and then suddenly, at the end of the second week, they start, showing a little bit of weakness, and then into the final week, really in big trouble.
Well, Primož Roglic knows all about that, of course, with that infamous time trial in the Tour. So, yeah, every second counts for Primož, and if he can find some today, then he will go for it. So expect him to be busy if it's all back together towards the end of the day. You'll have Mike Turnison as well. I'm not quite sure whether Turnison is going to be busy leading him in. It would be useful, depends on how they have scoped the finale. From 600 metres out for, about 200 metres, it's 7%, Sean. That's no laughing matter for a sprinter.
No, it's not. It's a very difficult run in, and if they really push on in the end, because it is lumpy, in the final, this one. And for some reason, if the race really speeds up 30-40 kilometres out, well, that's going to be a testing day for a lot of them. And the men that would be leading out the sprinters here, they might be in a bit of difficulty, so it could become a scrappy day at the end.
We're just pondering the punch-up at the end of today. And just looking at some of these very remote farms with vast open hectares, as you can see, that have been beautifully tended. And cypress trees just offering up a little bit of a screen here to these, the fruit trees. Not quite sure what fruit it is, but if I had to guess, I'd probably say lemon. Can't see any nets, which suggests that it is not olives, but I could be wrong. You have to get olive trees are netted to stop the fruit spoiling by falling on the floor. There you go, just in case you were wondering what on earth I was going on about. You won't be alone. 96.5 kilometres then from home today, and they're rolling through nicely. If you've got one of these farms out here and you come back from the shops and you forgot the eggs, it's a long way, isn't it, to go back out. There is all it proves to us, Sean, on days like this is just how much space there is in Spain. Very highly populous on the coast. The interior, very much not so.
Well, if you went shopping and forgot the eggs, Carlton, you'd have to go look for bird's nest. Because it's a long way.
Such a Kelly thing to say.
It's a long way to get back to the shop here, and we can see this again. Not as bad as we have seen previous days, but still, it's a lonely place out here. If you're walking out here on the fruit trees all day, in the conditions that you can get out here, well, it's a much harder job than riding a bike in the Vuelta.
Well, if you'd asked Remco Evenepoel that last night, he might have said something else. But apparently he's had a good night. So he said he's carrying a few bandages, a few plasters, hidden, of course, from us by his a new kit. But the man in red, he kind of looks like that jersey is nailed to his shoulders at the moment. But it's such a long race and so much can happen. And amazing, Sean, that he took his first Grand Tour stage win in that time trial. He'd have been relieved to have got that stage win out of the way, because it's kind of like an affirmation of a leader and indeed a champion that you have a stage win along the way as well. Nobody likes to. It's always something missing if you win a Grand Tour without winning a stage, I think.
Yes, and to win a time trial as well, it shows that you're in control, and it's always a great thing to get the time trial victory over your challengers. And of course, the rest of this race, he will be looking for a mountain stage as well, a mountain top finish that he will be interesting to get before the end of the Vuelta. But first of all, he's going to think about his red jersey and, tactically think about that on the stages where it is going to be difficult, and see what the situation is in the end. And of course, if we come down to a big mountain top finish, the way he's been demonstrating on those mountain top finishes, he is going to be a candidate to get a stage.
And that forlorn-looking little outpost in the middle of what looked like a salt bed was actually a renowned lagoon, which, because of the temperatures in these parts, looks like it's evaporated. Well, it has evaporated. Yes, let's hope the battle hasn't, and indeed that Valverde, who would have been really suited to a day like today in the past, finds his legs as well. Watch La Vuelta live, of course, on GCN+. Those of you who have been away on an ad break in the last few moments, well, if you want to avoid that, then you can see the racing uninterrupted, on demand, with highlights in the palm of your hand. Expert analysis. We have documentaries, features, and indeed, of course, the pre- and post-race shows for you to enjoy. Stays, previews, news, interactive content, and just about everything you could possibly want, including some spectacular films and documentaries, original and indeed exclusive to the app. It's all in one place. It's on the GCN app. Go and have a look and check out GCN+. You'll love it. Anytime, anywhere, and on any screen. Right now, Vuelta Live, plus all the other racing that's going on now. That lagoon looked a bit forlorn, Sean. Scorched as you like.
Well, as I said, just moments before that, here you can get really warm conditions, just boiling hot. And the riders will be happy with the temperatures we're getting yesterday, again today. It's cooled down a bit, and That's 30 degrees, plus 1 or 2 is okay for racing. Those guys, that's not a problem. But when it gets to 36, 38, that's when it really hits, and 40 degrees. As we see in the Tour of France this year, it really saps your energy, and there's a lot of riders do not support the real heat well.
Indeed. I was actually wondering whether that's what had an impact on Jay Vine, perhaps yesterday. He won in cooler temperatures. Let me just double check on his winning, the temperatures on his winning days. 19 Celsius to Piccogiano. 20 Celsius to Fanqueya, that was on stage 8. Piccogiano was stage 6. Very different from 32 Celsius yesterday, Sean. And Jay Vine didn't like it.
Well, Jay Vine said he was feeling really good most of the day. In the breakaway, he said it wasn't that difficult. He had 2 teammates, of course, who did an excellent job and controlled and kept the pace. When we see that Estella going in the attack, they were the ones who rode behind and controlled that he did not get any major advantage. And he got to the final climb, and he said he was feeling quite good. The watts, everything, the output was good, and the final 5 kilometers, it seemed to hit him. But that is sometimes what happens, and you can feel really good and you're very confident. Although when you're with riders that are real good finishers and climbers like Carapaz, Kelderman, those guys, if they're on a real good day, well, then they can be that bit better. And that's always the problem. In a race, you can be feeling real good and you say to yourself, well, I'm feeling good today. The legs are just, have the power there. And then you come up against 2 or 3 guys that bit better on the day.
Simple as that. Well, Jay Vine came across 6 other riders that were better than him on the day. Did come home in 7th place, so he was there or thereabouts. Didn't score any mountains points, though, unfortunately, to add to his tally. But nonetheless, he is the leader of the polka dot jersey King of the Mountains competition, and we'll be seeing more of him a little bit later. You can be sure in this race, possibly tomorrow. Let's see. 91 kilometres from home. And we're coming through La Ronda, Andalusia. Sean, I look at these buildings and they look hot. What on earth did they do in the days before air conditioning? I guess they slept during the hot bit. It's as simple as that. You had to.
Yes, well, it would have been difficult during the summer months when you get this real big heat. I suppose go in the cellar and stay there for most of the day.
It's funny you should say that. The Real Santuario de Maria Santissima de R. Kelly. R. Kelly, isn't he a rapper? Anyway. A-R-C-E-L-I. It's a different R. Kelly. Anyway. They do have a barrel vault. So while you're down in the cellar, Sean, you could fill your boots if you happen to be there. Because as monks are given to doing, they do produce what is occasionally referred to as the water of life.
Yes, in the barrel, fill your boots and have a siesta.
There you go. That's what they did in the days before air conditioning. Meanwhile, we have our 3-man breakaway, and as you can possibly tell, it's not the most dramatic. Hey fellas, keep pruning, doing a great job. Still can't tell quite what these trees are, Sean, because I can't identify the fruit. Is it olives, Sean? Have I got it wrong?
Yes, it looks like the leaves are olives, yes.
Yes, I think so. Well, these guys, Pippas or not, we will find out how they go.
And as we can see here, the road as well, you can see the way it kicks up a bit, and there's a lot of this as we get into the final of this one. And when you're riding along in the peloton at this pace, well, you don't you really feel it, but when it's going full racing, well, then if that is in the final 40 kilometers, that's where this stage could be a difficult one to keep your troops in a good place and have them there when you need in the run to the line, because if that's not the case and it gets very messy, it could be a scrappy sprint, and then position becomes a major difficulty for a lot of the riders.
Just wait to see if the wind has actually turned around a little bit. We're expecting a tailwind today. The speeds that we're going at is suggestive of that, at least for some period of the day, although they were busy forming echelons not that long ago. But the road is meandering slightly as we came up to Campillos and then headed cross country, and now picking up after a turn. In fact, I'll let me find out in a short while where that turn is, and it could be that by the time we get to 92 to go, yeah, they have made the turn, so it's back to a tailwind. Average pace today, Sean, up there amongst the quickest. We're talking around 45 kilometres per hour. So plenty of time as well, I think, as we're ahead of schedule, to just take on board the goodies and make sure that you've got all the fluids where they need to be, especially on a very hot day, which is what we've got today.
Yes, well, I think the start gave us a good average, but as we go further into the day, I think we will lose some of that good average they posted up. And, 2:28 at the moment. The three riders out in front, they're going to be left, as we talk about, hanging out there when it gets to a point. Unless there's a team that really want to make the race difficult at a point. But otherwise, if it's left to the teams that are controlling all day here to this point, well, then it's going to be a one where they will leave the three out as long as possible before they start preparing the sprint.
Now, we're about to hear from Alejandro De Marchi. And he's talking about superstition amongst riders. Riders, of course, have got to have a natural inherent belief that they are all-powerful. Mind you, that doesn't really get displayed that often by Dan Lloyd, I must admit. We'll be hearing from him a little bit later on. He's always been extraordinarily modest about his capabilities. However, those that believe that perhaps there's something out there that's stopping them winning other than their own talent, and superstition can creep in. Let's hear from De Marchi.
Alessandro De Marchi, today stage 13 of the Vuelta a Espana. I'm wondering if you are a superstitious rider yourself.
Yeah, I mean, as an Italian and cyclist, I need to be superstitious. So I used to follow some rule. Maybe more, sometimes more for like a joke, or like to keep going a tradition. But yeah, I must say I'm superstitious.
Can you tell us any of these rituals you used to do?
For example, if gonna happen that I have as a number the 13 or the 17, probably I'm gonna put upside down one of this, or I don't know. The salt on the table, never pass the salt hand by hand to another teammate. So this kind of rules.
And being stage 13, you are not worried at all?
No, I mean, today is a good day. 13, 14, doesn't matter. It's a good day. That's it.
Well, we didn't really get an insight into any special superstitions. I did know a guy who would, on race days, he would only peel a banana from the bottom. Apparently that's the way chimpanzees do it as well, as opposed to the stalk end, if that makes sense. But Sean, what did you get up to invoke the good luck?
No, I wasn't really superstitious.
You were too good. That was the problem.
Well, but no, in the earlier days, of course, when you become a bike rider, when you move into the professional ranks, you go into those races, like a Tour of France, for example, for your first time. If you believe in that, and if you are that, well then, you do think about it. But I never was, and sometimes as well, before a big event, you might say a prayer, but I tried that a few times, but it never seemed to work.
You're kidding me. Look at what you won. You got more than your fair share.
Well, the time I prayed, Carlton, it was once when I was a bit desperate to try and win. Later in my career, I suppose, when I was starting to run out of time. And don't mention the races now, but
was it Chambéry, was it?
Yes, well, yeah, the World Championships, of course, after so many attempts and finishing, in the top places, and then you start thinking, well, it's not every year that the circuit suits you. You're moving on your career as well, and you try that, but I don't think it changed anything for me.
Oh, I don't know, Sean. Maybe it was a lesson that you had to be taught. Let me know how you get on later. 86 kilometres from home, 2 minutes and 31. We'll find out from Alan Blythe, who'll be joining us in a short while as well, if he had any mantras and suspicions. I imagine it was something to do with, I don't know, particularly groovy socks. No idea.
But the one salt on the table, we heard Marky talking
everyone
there.
does that though, don't they?
Yes, they do. That's the one which is the... and more in, I think in Spain, especially they do that a lot. I remember when it was in Spanish teams, everybody would do that. Where in the French teams or in the teams, Belgium, not as much.
I used to be sent out on New Year's Eve by my mum with a piece of coal, a piece of bread and some salt. And I had to knock on the door. No matter how cold or rainy it was. Lived on the Pennines. That was penury. But anyway, it seemed to work out for us for the following year. Rituals. Well, Richards, I think, were struck yesterday by Richard Carapaz. Fantastic, Sean, for him to get himself a stage win. And settle the nerves just a little bit for him. I mean, they're going well anyway, but for Richard Carapaz himself, who's leaving the team, of course, it seemed to be quite cathartic at the end there.
Yes, well, when you're leaving a team, of course, you always want to perform and you want to do a good result in the important races that towards the end of season. And yeah, for Carapaz, the Vuelta was a big target to try and, win this race or finish on the podium. But unfortunately, he wasn't at the fitness level when he came to take the start of the Vuelta. And he was, back home. He had to crash before he came back for the Vuelta. So that hindered his preparation and his level of fitness a bit. But yeah, now he's got it back and he's, pulled some glory back.
There's a certain beauty to the terrain here. Almost none of it untouched by human hand. And we just sail by some of those who are indeed engaged working in this place. It looks extremely hot work, I must admit. You get a lot of itinerant workers, both here and in France as well, that spend their time just following the seasons, really, and doing the tasks that I guess have been done for generations. Have you ever come across a disgorger, Sean, in the Champagne region? Guys with a little tiny metal tube around their neck?
No.
These guys, their whole task is to take away the fermentation, the pulp of the yeast from behind the cork. So they stick the little tube in and disgorge it, and that gives you clear champagne. It's the same here in Spain, of course, with Carvo, that follow the same sort of methods. And these guys, they're kind of like the cowboys of the wide open plains. They carry the little. They're kind of like travelling community, really. They carry this little little tool on a chain around their neck, and they're kind of known to sleep rough. And historically speaking, I'm sure things are possibly different nowadays, but whenever there's wine, whenever there's anything that needs to be tidied, then these guys, the pinmen, they find work. But it's a tough old life, especially if you're out here in the fields, as Sean was saying. And for the riders today, then temperature is potentially going to be an issue, and the cars will be constantly reminding them. Not sure what the protocol is today, Sean, for taking a bottle, but you'd imagine it'd be reasonably late with these sort of temperatures.
From 15 kilometres after the start to 20 kilometres before the finish is today. And of course, with the flat running, of course, they do not want riders maybe, using the sticky bottle in the final. So 20 kilometres out, the bar closes. But just going back to, the workers in the Champagne region, in the wine and regions of France, Beaujolais, of course, that area we did it many times during different races. And I did a cyclocross down there in the winter time with a friend. He has a vineyard down there, and I remember we had to sleep in the barn, and my God, we got a freezing that night. It was something I will never forget.
Go on. How did you manage to survive it? Because it does get very cold.
Well, I remember the clothes I had for the cyclocross, long sleeve jerseys, leg warmers. I put everything on after I got feeling the cold. I got into bed, of course, and I just couldn't go to sleep. It was far too cold. So then I got out and got all my clothing I had on for the race next day, put all that on, but still it was so cold. Very little sleep on that night. So that is my memory of the workers, that what they do. But of course in this time of year when they are doing it is warm conditions.
Welcome back, everybody. Just talking about the really extremes of temperature that you get out here on the wide open plain. Pete, our producer, reminding me that La Rambla, which is the next town over from the finish today, recorded the hottest temperature on record, and it was this year in these parts. What do you think it was, Sean?
42.
It was 47.6. And once you get up beyond 38 degrees, every degree additional to that feels to a human being like another 5-8 degrees. It's really starts to get punishing at the end. It's where it starts to burn. Really not very nice at all. So, yeah, this is, as suspected, Sean, the hottest part of Spain. I think it's possibly the hottest part of Europe, with 47.6 recorded here. Something absolutely outstanding. So if they have watered the fields here, it's going to be evaporated. They're not going to be troubled here by any kind of spray. But as you can see, finally we've crossed the plain, and we're going to start playing with a few valleys. There are some gullies here as well, for the very good reason that when it does rain, then it's given to flash flooding as well, which can actually be something of a challenge, let's put it that way. Nice for them to have a bit of variation, Sean. It must be a blessing when you've had some of these arrow straight roads on pan flat terrain to suddenly get some work, something to play with.
Yes, well, it does change it a bit because the long straights, and we have that in some of the areas, as we can see. This section now is where the peloton is. It's a longer section, but it is changing all the time. But yeah, the long straight road you can see for 2-3 kilometers straight in front. It is really difficult for the breakaway, and also for the riders on the front of the peloton. When it's a little bit more turning and up and down, well then it's not as boring as we say in biking terms. But I think talking with the temperatures here, and our colleague Pete there saying it must be cool conditions for the people here, because if you hear them temperatures they get during the peak of summertime, it's frightening.
Yeah, he's actually been very busy. So Pete as well. Carlos Rodriguez and Juan Ayuso, if you combine their age, they're still younger than Alejandro Valverde. That's indicative of the entire peloton at the moment, Sean. If you've got the numbers, you've got the contract, and we're seeing younger riders, haven't we, because of that?
Yes, well, we're seeing more and more younger riders coming through, and we talked a lot about Pogacar when he won the Tour of France, that famous win over Roglic when he beat him in that time trial to Planche de Belleville. And yeah, there's more riders starting to appear. Of course, the man who's leading the race as well, Evenepoel, he was talked about when he was junior, and he went straight from junior into the Pro Tour. It is, it is something. It's difficult, even though you have that huge talent. Physically, you're able to do it. All the learning that you do through junior, under 23. Sometimes they can miss that. Your bike handling, your experience, all of that. You miss out on a couple of years there, but they have so much talent. They can overcome that.
It's interesting, actually, as well. There's we were talking to Theo Gegenhardt a little earlier today, and he was saying about Ben Turner. He may well be a young man, but he's actually garnered quite a bit of experience out on the road elsewhere, and now finds himself in this Grand Tour. Our pace is still being maintained actually at the moment. That's partially because we've taken a gentle sort of left-hand turn. We're heading north, and as a result, the terrain may well be rising and falling, but it is a tailwind that we're dealing with. Going to hear from Wilco Kelderman in a few moments' time. A man who finds himself in a very happy place after yesterday being in the break. He's now up to 6th place overall. Just shows you, if indeed you are prepared to invest, sometimes it comes your way. Well, congrats with your time gained yesterday, but of course you went for the stage victory. Was you went maximum out there? How was it? Well, to be honest, I think it was all I could do. Otherwise, I would have been on the wheel of Carapaz, and I would have been able to battle for the victory. We've tried to get everything out of it. A high pace during the climb, which suits me best, and trying to play the game. But unfortunately, Carapaz was just better. Simple as that. In the end, you gain a lot of time, and you get yourself into the top 10 in the GC. Is that now going to be something of a goal? Maybe even improve in the third week? Well, the next mountain stages, I will try and see how well I can do, and if it goes well enough, then I'll keep fighting for the GC, and if not, then obviously I'll let that ambition go. Well, today might be a stage for Danny van Poppel, who is doing really well in this Vuelta. How will you try and control it with the team? Well, we're still with 7, of course, so we can put someone at the front, control things, and more teams that want to control than us, then that's good. And Danny is doing great, so why not? Danny is doing great. He's the pick today of Adam Blythe, who I'm still waiting for to come and join us, actually.
Carlton.
Oh, hello, mate. I didn't get a notice.
Daniel Lloyd did send a WhatsApp, but you've been busy commentating.
I have. That's the point. Hey, mate, you've gone for Danny van Poppel. He nearly did it for you and for me, because thanks very much for the tip. On stage 11, it's got to be him today, surely, isn't it?
Oh, well, that's a tough question, Colin. And I think him and Mads Pedersen are the hot favourites today, but there are sprinters, the likes of Timmerlier, that have not got anything out of this race so far. So he'll be looking at this and wanting to, get further up than he has been. He got third a couple of days ago, but I'm sure he'll want to get up a couple more steps. But Danny van Poppel is so difficult to say. He has said that this finish does suit him better, but it's a bunch sprint, and I think even in his interview, the best sprinters in the world are not here, so I have a good chance. He is correct. The real fast men are not here, but there is still fast men here. Mads Pedersen, third in Tour de France stage. We all know how strong he is, and this finish suits Mads right down to the ground as well. So he's going to have his work cut out, but he's in with a very good shout, I think. Well,
one man, Adam, who's done the job in the past on this ramp is John Degenkolb back in 2014, and he actually got lively, didn't he, on the day that Van Poppel finished behind Caden Groves. He was the one that started it off, but we've seen him go up some ramps before. At Hatterdam, I mentioned it earlier on. Degenkolb has clearly still got a bit of a hunger, and he'll want to go well today for DSM.
He will do, and he led out the sprint quite nicely the other day. He went very, very early, but that's the first time I've seen Degenkolb at the front in quite a while. It will suit him, and if that sprint was anything to go by, he'll be definitely in the mix. But Johnny's getting a little bit older. He hasn't got as many of those fast twitch muscles that he used to have. So I think it will be difficult for him today to win, but he will be right up there, and I'll be pleased to see him win. He's one of the guys that are still regarded as being quite young, but he's not now. He's one of the elder statesmen within the peloton, I'd say.
He is. He also went for Brian Kokar, I seem to remember, earlier in this race. He's got a chance today, hasn't he?
I did, yeah. It's a really tough one with Brian. The news about him with his director saying he's going to go home and concentrate on getting some more points in smaller races, because obviously that point system's a bit mad. So this is his sort of last chance today. But it does suit him. He's been up in the finish, up there in finishes on what he's like today many times before. So he'll be in with a good chance. But the weather, the heat, the way that, they're 2 weeks into a Grand Tour almost, the legs can start to hurt a little bit more than what they do if you were normally fresh. But he will be up there, Carlton, for sure. For sure.
Jay Fine, they didn't dwell too much on the fact that it was a very hot day yesterday, 32 Celsius. But we were talking about a little bit earlier about when he took his victories. The day's temperatures there were 19 on his first victory on stage 6 and 20 on stage 8 when he won again. it is very different, isn't it, Adam, to suddenly find yourself with the oven turned up, and there's no hotter place, it seems, in Europe than here. We were hearing 47.6 as is the hottest record-breaking temperature in this very locale.
Yes, I think our producer Pete is his partner doesn't live too far away from down here, so he's been telling about all the forest fires, etc., which have not been great. So it is a very, very hot place, and we did see Jay Vine yesterday. Dan Lloyd pointed it out, actually. He's just sat next to me. How much sweat, how much salt was coming through Jay Vine's shorts. There was visibly a lot more than most of the other riders in that break. So, you know, with the rest day, then into a time trial, he might have just been, I don't know, he might have just had too much salt in his body, maybe. Who knows? But, yeah, he suffered yesterday in that heat, that's for sure.
Getting those electrolytes where they need to be. Absolutely vital. They've got to go somewhere, and it's usually out of your pores. That's P-O-R-E-S as opposed to P-A-W-S. Talking about big dogs, here is Dan Lloyd. He joins us as Sean Kelly goes to get some snap. I'll be joining him in a short while as well. In fact, I think it's just about time for me to go tinging. Dan, very, very hot today, and I imagine so will be the battle at the end, but we might have to wait.
We will have to wait in the region of 72 kilometres for the big battle, unfortunately. Yeah, the three-man move. We weren't sure how many people would want to get into the breakaway on a day like today. I think all of the riders would have seen the teams controlling things right from the very beginning, just by seeing their presence towards the front. So a Trek Segafredo, Bike Exchange and Cofidis all loitering there. I think it would have put a number of riders off, including Fred Wright that we spoke to this morning, who said he'd look out for the breakaway if it was big enough, but if not, he fancied giving the sprint a go.
Come on, that's not how he put it. It was a lot better than that. The Fred White way of speaking, he was like, yeah, I'll have a go at the sprint, and yeah, I'll have a go at the breakaway.
He is a happy puppy, isn't he?
He's brilliant.
I'm a hungry doggy, so I'm off.
Well, just before you go, Carlton,
yeah.
You were talking about superstitions earlier. I was wondering if you had any before you start commentating.
No, actually.
Hold on, I know a little. Carlton, it might not be a superstition, but Carlton has very, very fine pens.
That is true. I do.
I've thrown you here, haven't I, Dan?
Yeah, I use a pen that is 0.05 of a millimetre, so that I can write copious notes in extremely small writing. So it's all on one piece of paper. Yeah, I'm actually usually too busy because, as you well know, Dan, you can never do too much research, and there's always, if you've got 5 minutes, then that's 5 minutes to do more research. It can be hellish in the lead up to a broadcast, and it just never stops. It may sound swan-like, my delivery, but believe me, there's a couple of paddles going like the clappers under the water.
You could do 5 years of preparation and still feel like you might have missed something. That's the problem. Well, enjoy your break, Carlton. We look forward to hearing your voice later on, and that of Sean Kelly. We'll be hearing from Robbie McEwen shortly, but for the next little while, it'll be myself, Dan Lloyd, and Adam Blythe taking you through today's stage 13 of La Vuelta. Lots of talk about Danny Van Poppel. Adam just mentioning in his pre-race interview, he was saying that the best sprinters aren't here. He has won a stage of La Vuelta before, which I'd completely forgotten about, all the way back in 2015. The man he beat that day was Daryl Impey, also in this race, and also a rider in his heyday, you would say, would have a decent chance on a finish like today. We've not seen the best of him for a little while due to crashes and injuries that he's had to get back to, but I did notice this morning Israel Startup Nation's Patrick Bevin saying that he is going to be looking after Daryl Impey today on the run into the finish.
Oh, yeah, why not? You've got to give it a go, haven't you? And if a couple of, I'm going to say today was an easier day for Daryl yesterday as well. He's a very capable climber, so he'd have trundled up that finish climb without too much effort. Going in today, why not have a go? Daryl is one of the older men in the peloton who knows where to put himself. So if you get things right, he will be right up there today. Have you got any superstitions, by the way?
I have none.
Even
no, I'm not
racing?
a particularly superstitious person.
Yeah.
You?
It's a shame. No, none. No.
Also a shame.
Yeah.
Well, there you can see the average speeds of the peloton versus the breakaway for the last 20 minutes of today's stage. Very similar. They're pegging them at almost exactly the same time and have been doing so ever since we got our live coverage. I think it's gone up a little bit from the low 2 minutes up to this 2 minutes and 49 seconds that we've got now. Trek Segafredo doing a lot of the work on the front for Mads Pedersen, and here is his teammate Juan Pedro Lopez, the guy that wore the pink jersey for more days than I care to remember back at the Giro d'Italia in May. Came into this race with some general classification ambitions which came undone fairly quickly. Since then he's done a lot of work for his Danish teammates ahead of sprints and trying to bring breakaways back. So he's fallen way down the general classification, but he's hoping to come good in breakaways over the last week or so of this race. So we wish him the best with that. And of course, Pedersen with a rather healthy lead in the points classification as things stand. He sits on 184, which puts him 88 ahead of the next best person. That's Marc Soler of UAE Team Emirates. He and Battistello have been picking up a lot from the breakaways. It's the Italian who sits in third place. Well, we spoke about the Fred Wright interview. If you didn't hear it before, we've got it here for you again now.
You've been very open in your interviews right after your second places. Have you had time to rewatch the stages, rewatch the sprint, and take some ideas for the next opportunity?
Yeah, I know where I went wrong, and you know, it's at the same time it's easy to make mistakes, but no, I'm just got to keep a level head and keep trying.
But I mean, it must be nice to learn some more things about you, no? In this Vuelta a España, you are riding so well, and you are being one of the big names here.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I've kind of, to begin with, you know, in the Tour, it was always a bit like, oh, maybe you want to go to the Vuelta, and I kind of hadn't really fully got it in my mind yet, but actually, no, I'm really happy to be here, and yeah, to be animating the race again is what I wanted, but I just want that win. That'd be lovely.
Thank you so much. Good luck. Thanks.
Thank you.
Fred Wright, who despite completing the Tour de France not so long ago and more than halfway through the Vuelta a España, still seems full of energy and full of beans.
And Fred, we want you to get that win as well. You thoroughly deserve it. It'd be great to see him today, just have a little go, wouldn't it?
Well, like I said on the breakaway, I'd just love to see the winning interview of Fred Wright, because he's great to listen to when he hasn't won, and I'm sure he'd be even better to listen to when he does finally take that big win that does seem fairly imminent based on what we've seen so far this year. Gap creeping up then, just short of the 3-minute mark there, but nothing for this main peloton to worry about. We now have, I think there's still the 3 teams working on the front. So Trek Segafredo, Cofidis for Brian Coquard, who's been in the headlines this morning, as Carlton was mentioning. And that's Luke Durbridge there in the blue, third in line for Team Bike Exchange Jayco, working for Caden Groves. They have one fewer rider than they did for Caden Groves' victory a couple of days ago, because Callum Scottson was unable to take the start yesterday due to sickness. He did not test positive for COVID-19, but was not well enough to start yesterday's stage. So 6 riders left for that particular squad. I think we still have just the 4 full squads remaining in this race. UAE Team Emirates, Euskaltel, EF Education Easy Post, and unfortunately, the other one is Astana. So 4 teams with the complete squad of 8 riders that they started with. So the good news this morning was that all 147 riders who finished yesterday's stage took to the start today, and we haven't seen that for some time at La Vuelta a España, despite there being a COVID positive, that of Juan Ayuso. Apparently, again, his viral load is low enough that he's of no danger to anybody else or to himself. So he is continuing in the race, but it's caused much uproar amongst some of the riders who've already gone home, who didn't display any symptoms and went home waiting for the viral load results. One of those being Jose Herrada of Team Cofidis.
Just as you mentioned there, Dan, with Astana being a full team still, I think it's fair to say they've not had the most successful year so far, have they?
No.
Lopez, he's 7th on GC at the minute, 6.55 down, 5.56. If you were him, Would you go all in to try and get on the podium, or would you risk to lose some time maybe and go for a stage win? Or do you think he could stay in that place and get a GC win at the same time?
Well, I think a lot of people out there are speculating that he could take back 10 minutes on the Sierra Nevada high altitude finish coming up. If you're watching on TV, you're off for a short commercial break. We'll be back shortly. Oh yeah, he's had a solid ride, Miguel Angel Lopez, so far in this race, there or thereabouts. Great time trial, didn't he? But I think you're right, he would probably be one of the riders that would be willing to risk things to move significantly up the general classification. I don't think, by his standards, 7th place is really anything to write home about. And we keep saying it, but we kind of need those riders in the top 10 that aren't happy with the position that they're in.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
if they are all happy with where they are, they're just going to play things safe, not put it all on the line, not go on these big attacks that we all hope to see. We've got a number of riders in the top 10 that I think will be looking to move up further.
Well, on that, Roglic.
Exactly.
What do you think? Happy with second?
No,
I don't think
he's won the race the last 3 years.
Yeah, I think he'll be still happy with second, but I think he won't go all in. He'll try a couple of attacks on a couple of days, try and, you know, move up, see if it works. But then if it doesn't, I think he'll just go, right, I'm just going to do what I can now. Mas has been climbing better than him.
Yep.
From what we've seen so far. So if Mas doesn't overtake him, I'd say he'd try. If Mas did overtake him, I think he'd try to go all in to win. And if not, I think he'd stay where he is.
You just never know, though, do you? Everything can change in the last week of a Grand Tour. And I was only thinking that yesterday, actually. We were, of course, bigging up Jay Vine's chances from the breakaway, based on what we'd seen from his 2 previous stage wins. But he'd obviously paid for the efforts earlier on in La Vuelta and was not able to even be in the top 5 on yesterday's climb, which I think most people, perhaps even himself, would have been a little bit surprised about. But a brilliant win by Richard Carapaz yesterday after things hadn't gone his way thus far in La Vuelta a España. Allowed by his team Ineos Grenadiers to make the day's breakaway despite their presence in the top 10 on GC of Teo Geoghegan-Hart and then Carlos Rodriguez right up there in 4th place. Carapaz on the move, and as we were saying on the breakaway, he's a proper racer. Loves to get stuck in, and I think he would have really enjoyed that stage yesterday as much as pretty much any of his other victories in his career.
That is the region we're in, Dan, in Andalusia, and we are in the finishing town today. Is it too early for some little facts about where we're going?
Well, we'll leave it whilst we're on a commercial break for our Linear TV. I wouldn't want anybody to miss it.
Very true.
Adam, after all your research today. Oh, the gap's continuing to climb, isn't it? 3 minutes and 23 seconds now. Nothing for them to worry about, though, is there?
Nah, not at all. I think they've just taken it easy over that climb there. A little bit of a bump in the road, cruise up it, no stress. There is a tailwind, so that breakaway, although 64k's to go, 3 minutes 22. There's only 3 riders in there, and I think the peloton will be fairly comfortable with it. There's no big rush, but with that tailwind, they will have to ride quickly, very quickly, a lot quicker than what the breakaway is going, obviously, to bring them back. But I think they'll be riding it like they do in the Gruppetto. A little bit easier on the climbs, harder on the flat, where it's obviously easy for their sprinters to get more of a draft and have an easier run into that finish.
If you're rejoining us, we're getting a close-up view of the day's breakaway. 3 riders heading up the road. Many of you will be familiar with them because they've been up the road at least one other time in this Vuelta a España. Julius van den Berg feels like an eternity ago, but you will all remember, I'm sure, on the first weekend of this race, first road stage, he was the guy that eventually won the first King of the Mountains point up in the Netherlands after 3 or 4 flat-out sprints, where he and his breakaway companions couldn't quite decide where the line was coming that represented the King of the Mountains point. So he's the man from EF Education Post on the screen right now in that pink jersey. Alongside him, 2 riders from Spain and the pro-continental level teams. The rider going through shot now is Okamika, the former triathlete riding for Burgos BH, and Escadi are represented there by Joan Bau. None of them a threat on the general classification. The best of them is Bau at 1 hour, 42 minutes and 34 seconds. So nothing for Remco Evenepoel to worry about today, of course.
That sprint there from Van den Berg on the first day, I think that was the most entertaining mountain point I've ever seen. It was like intervals on the road, but we were not quite enough recovery in between them all. You didn't see it, go back and watch stage 1. It's on the GCN app, Discovery app. It is fantastic. 4 sprints in the matter of 2 minutes, absolutely flat out.
Well, we are expecting another sprint today. A slightly different one, given the nature of the parkour up towards the finish line, because it is up. It's not a summit finish. It's not as hard as the stage that Roglic won when we got to Spain ahead of Mads Pedersen. So we are expecting the bigger name sprinters left in this race to be contesting it. However, our producer on the ground, Doug, said that the finish is steeper than some teams might think. From 700 metres to go, it's approximately 5%.
Well, Carlton's planted a seed in my head here with Degenkolb.
Has he?
Yeah, he has. And I think that Degenkolb, you know, the way that he was sprinting the other day, that's the best I've seen him in quite a while. He's not had the greatest season, I think it's fair to say. In his Palmares, it is one that I always forget about. Milan San Remo, Paris-Roubaix. It's one of the best within that peloton. This is a finish that will suit him today, and he's got a strong team for that lead out as well around him. What do you think of him? Chances?
You're right. Because of that horrific accident that he and a number of teammates were involved in a training camp in Spain quite a few years ago now, he's never been quite the same rider since. I seem to remember he did win the Roubaix stage of the Tour de France.
He did, yeah.
After that accident. What I felt from his sprint a couple of days ago was that he wasn't backing himself, maybe lacking confidence, and that's why he went so early, trying to spring a surprise on everybody else. But you've got to say, of all of the sprints that we've had so far, today would be the one that suits him most. I think my first recollection of John Degenkolb was actually when I was in the same race as him at the Criterium de Dauphiné. I don't remember which year it was, might have been 2011. He won a really hard uphill sprint there that I don't think many people thought was going to end up with a bunch sprinter winning the stage.
Yeah, he was right up there in a lot of bunch sprints as well within the Tour de France. He was part of Marcel Kittel when it was... I forgot the name of the team now. Skill Shimano maybe when he was in there. But he was part of Marcel Kittel lead-out train. A very good sprinter in his own right. But as I said, after that accident, sadly, we've just not seen that John Degenkolb we were used to. But he's going to be on the money today, surely. I think with a solid sprint like he's got as well, quite a long sprint, similar to Mads Pedersen. Out of all the sprints we've had so far and that are to come, this one is right up his strata.
I've found the stage he won. He actually won 2 that year, and it was stage 2 that I remember. He won the stage ahead of Samuel Dumoulin. He was kind of a sprinter, but also very good on those sort of punchy finishes like we've got today. Sebastian Hinault was 3rd. Paul Martin's 4th. Joaquim Rodriguez was in 5th place. That gives you an idea of just how tough that finish was. Nicholas Roach in the top 10 as well. And it was a 5-second gap, 6-second gap actually, after the first 14 riders crossed the line. So I remember thinking, how on earth did John Degenkolb win that? Wasn't a rider I knew a huge amount at the time because he would have been pretty young back in 2011. 33 now, he must have only been 21, 22 years of age. Back in those days, 21 or 22 and winning stages in a World Tour race was not unheard of, but didn't happen as much as it seems to these days.
No, well, we say that. We've had winners of the Tour de France.
That's what I mean.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
It used to be a bit more...
getting it the other way around.
A bit rare for somebody in their early 20s to be so successful so young. Talking of which, we must give a shout out to 19-year-old Marco Brenner of Team DSM for his performance yesterday. We've got 2 teenagers in this race. Ayuso, who we've spoken about a lot, of course, because he's 5th place in the overall classification. But the other one, who is, I think, about 20 days older than Ayuso, is Marco Brenner of Germany and Team DSM. An incredible performance by him yesterday. He was still right up there towards the end in that front group. Ultimately finished 5th, but that bodes very well for the future of his career.
It does indeed. Ayuso, Brenner are the only teenagers to start this Vuelta this year who are teenagers.
Oh, I made a mistake. He turns 20 on the 27th of August during the race.
Close. But the other one is Andrei Ponomar. He started the Giro when he was 18 in 2021.
He completed it.
Unbelievable. And before that, it went right back down to Danny Van Poppel, who started the Tour de France in 2013 when he was 19. Before that, 2007, Ivan Rovny in the Giro, and then 1995, Sandro Giacomelli in the Giro as well. So you can see that the youth is really coming through the last 4 years. I've had 4 starters, well, 3 starters, because Ponamar started when he was 18 and 19 in the Giro.
Imagine starting, let alone finishing a Grand Tour at the age of 18. Beggars belief.
Well, I was told to stop in my first year. I was 20, and I got told to stop after stage 11. That's enough. We don't want to burn you out. Now, they'd be like, no way. You've got to finish this. You're young. You'll recover within a week. You'll be fine. That very much does seem to be how it's going now. The younger riders coming through, the body's younger and a bit fresher, able to recover quicker, maybe.
Robbie McEwen's joined us. How old were you when you did your first Grand Tour, Robbie?
Oh, yeah, well, good evening, guys. I was just trying to think before you even posed the question. I was thinking, how old was I when I rode my first Grand Tour? And I was 25. So, past it, really.
My first Grand Tour, you were actually in there, Robbie, in the Giro. I started in Holland. Dan, you were as well.
2010.
I was, yeah.
Yeah, 2010, yeah.
The good old days.
Just the old days.
Well, whilst things are quieter in today's stage, I will remind you that there's an awful lot of bike racing going on at this time of year. Not just La Vuelta a Espana, which is what we are currently working on, of course, but we've also got the Tour of Britain starting this Sunday up in Aberdeen. Tom Pidcock is there for the Ineos Grenadiers, as is Richie Porte, Robbie, who's doing his final ever race as a pro rider.
He is. I've been chatting to Richie a little bit of late, and also his wife Gemma, and yeah, it's a big deal that it's Richie's last race of his career, and I hope he has a fantastic week. I hope the crowds get out and appreciate him, and everybody sort of becomes aware that it's the great man's final race of his career. He's done so much. He's been an incredible teammate to so many, and achieved fantastic results for himself. And you know, at a certain point, I would have said he was the best one-week stage race rider in the world.
Well, it's funny that we mentioned Richie and the 2010 Giro. That's when he burst onto the scene.
It was, yeah. I'll get back to Richie
on the way to Aquila.
Yeah.
Yeah, a stage that we've tried to wipe from our memory because we were in it and it was awful. Let's hear from Brian Coquard of Team Cofidis. Is it for the punchers or the sprinters today, Brian? I'd say it's for both. It's not an easy stage with... It's quite a difficult finish, but not too bad. Honestly, on paper, it is the stage that suits me best. I'm very motivated for today. It suits me well, so we'll do everything to win the stage. What relationship do you have with Davide Cimolai? Yeah, we get along very well. I had a hectic year this year. I did a lot of stage races like Paris-Nice and the Tour de Suisse, and I was often on my own for the sprint finishes. But Cimolai was with me at the Vuelta Algarve. I didn't win there, but I finished second and third. I totally trust him, and I hope that it will work well today. Well, both those riders we've been talking about earlier on today, because speaking in another interview, Davide Cimolai suggested that this might be Brian Coquard's last day at La Vuelta a Espana, because the team want him to quit early so that he can concentrate on some other one-day races in order to pick up more UCI points, which is, I think, probably the best example we've ever had of how broken the point system is. Do you agree, Robbie?
I do agree. You know, it has happened in the past that riders have wanted to leave races to go and ride other races. In fact, it happened at the last Tour de France. It was one of the Izagirre brothers?
Yes, was it not Gorka?
Gorka Izagirre left the Tour de France with a day to go and ride his home race in the Basque region, which I found really quite strange. But I guess on the other hand, he wasn't going to win anything anymore, and the work was done. But it seems so strange to get so close to Paris, say, well, I'm off home because I want to ride my local race. But he did that and had permission from the organisation, and that is the thing you have to have. If you want to just step out of a race of your own accord to go and ride something else, the organisers of the race that you are leaving must give you permission to go and ride another race, and effectively they can block you if they want to.
How did he do, Dan?
In that particular instance, it was actually the day after the Tour de France finished, but I guess in order to get there for it and to have some sort of level of recuperation, he needed to leave the Tour de France. Which stage did he not start? Yeah, he didn't start the final day into Paris. I guess where they were for the individual time trial the previous day was far closer to the race that he wanted to go and do near his hometown. But he'll be pleased he did, because he got 38th.
Yeah, that's it. I was going to ask you where he got, because I knew he wasn't in the top 10.
Worth it.
Oh, well, he was on the start and the people appreciated it. But I know this stuff from my own situation, because I started the Vuelta in 2005. After about 5 or 6 stages, I was on my hands and knees. I went there exhausted, trying to see if I could grab a stage win to try and complete the trilogy in one season after winning at the Giro and the Tour. I couldn't do it. I was going worse and worse, further and further backwards in the results. So I decided, right, we've got a couple of losses. I need to get out of this race. I'm just exhausted. But a week later, after being at home doing absolutely nothing for a week, the team wanted me to line up in Paris-Brussels, and they had to ask permission to the organisers of the Vuelta if I was allowed to race.
Did they say yes?
They did say yes. They said, well, he's going so bad here, we might as well just say yes. I mean, whatever.
And I bet you won Paris-Brussels, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Brilliant.
I don't know of an instance where a rider has left a stage race or Grand Tour early and not been allowed to compete by the race organisation or the UCI. But that said, normally when you pull out of a race early, you give a slightly different reason as to why you want to leave, as opposed to saying,
yes,
I need to go and pick up some points in some smaller one-day races to keep my team in the World Tour for the following year. So it's a different scenario. It'll be interesting to see what the World Tour organisers do have to say about it, if that is indeed the case. I should point out that the sports director that we spoke to this morning had no idea about it. At least that's what he said in our interview. And we're not entirely sure that Davide Cimolai was meant to mention it in an interview either, so we'll keep our eyes peeled for that one.
Well, Brian Coquard as well, he's going along to races with the likes of Caleb Ewan and Fabio Jakobsen in as well. It's not like it's not going to be an easy win for him whatsoever.
No, but I think that's the point, isn't it? That even if he came 3rd, 4th or 5th, he's going to pick up a lot more points than he would do for maybe even a 2nd or 3rd place on a stage of La Vuelta.
Correct. I mean, he's one of the guys who could potentially win today. It's a good sort of finish for Brian Coquard. And I wonder if he does actually win the stage. You imagine he goes to be on the victory ceremony, and then you suddenly see him limping up there. See, I've got a really sore knee. I'm off home.
I'll tell you what, it's good that the teams don't care who wins the classification. Otherwise, every team would be just going to the smaller races, and we just have the smaller name riders at the biggest Grand Tours.
Oh, don't give them ideas.
We talked a lot about COVID, and we talked a lot about the UCI point system. It's probably time we spoke about something else. I was going to ask you what... go on.
Straight in.
How about being in Andalusia? And I've been meaning to talk about it over the last couple of days, and luckily we're still here. Let's maybe give it a few minutes till we get onto this one, as we're off to a break in a moment. We're going to save the good content for all the viewers.
Smooth, Robbie, smooth. Yeah, so the other races that we've got coming up also this weekend, the Maryland Classic, which actually I think is the biggest UCI race in the USA as things stand. It's got a decent field actually, and I think that that race and the Grand Prix of Quebec and Montreal, World Tour races in Canada that come the following week, have probably benefited from the location of the World Championships this year, because I guess it's well, am I correct in this, Robbie? Is it kind of a halfway house from Europe over to Australia, or am I wrong on that?
Well,
are they just
have
adding
always
travel?
Tended to fly the other way. Yeah, I think it's just more travel. Particularly the teams and the riders who are at Maryland, as far as I know, most of them aren't going on to the races in Canada. For example, the Bike Exchange team is there with Dylan Groenewegen. And the courses in Quebec and Montreal are not for Dylan Groenewegen, so he'll be travelling back home. And every time I travel backwards and forwards between Australia and Europe, I actually fly through the Middle East or Singapore as the stopovers. So yeah, otherwise it's a little bit more like feels more like a round the world trip going the other way through the US.
On the provisional start list that I was looking at this morning for the Maryland Classic, Michael Matthews was also listed for Team Bike Exchange. I presume he is doing the Grand Prix of Quebec and Montreal because he's done very well there in the past. Yeah, he will stay, and I think there's a mixture there. And I mean, there will be riders who do stay, and it looks at the moment it's one of those situations as back to COVID again. Sorry, but teams are really struggling to fill rosters at times, and they have to sort of wait till riders are available from finishing one particular race, jump across and go into another race. So you'll have Dylan Groenewegen in Maryland, he'll leave there, and someone else will come across and race in Quebec and Montreal. Maybe you'll get riders pulling out of the Vuelta to go and fill teams at a World Tour race in Canada. Who knows? Well, I noticed also Mike Woods will be racing again whilst the Vuelta a España is still on. Although that said, I saw that he was down for both the Tour of Britain and the Grand Prix of Quebec and Montreal, which overlap, so he can't obviously be doing them both, but you will see him back racing. For those of you who didn't know, he was at the Vuelta a España, but had a bad crash on stage 3 up in the Netherlands. Had a slight concussion, and so was unable to continue that day, which was a big shame, I think, for the race and for the team. But I guess they'll be happy over in Canada, because if he is doing those races, they're his home races, of course.
Just looking at that time gap, it's not come down. It's gone out since we last spoke about this. 65k to go. We're chatting about this, and it was around 2:48. It has gone out, and obviously the distance has gone down. You think they need to start panicking yet?
No. I don't think so. So many teams wanted to chase this one down. We are entering the final 50 kilometres of stage 13 of the Vuelta a España, the last sprinters' opportunity until Tuesday, because this weekend we've got a couple of summit finishes, one of which is the highest altitude summit finish of this race, and quite possibly of the season so far. I think I'm correct in saying, up to Sierra Nevada. So it'll be the climbers' opportunities for those 2 days. Rest day on Monday, the final one of the race, and then Tuesday looks like it might be another opportunity for the sprinters who remain in this race. And we'll wait and see how many do remain in this race beyond the final rest day that we've got. If you're away on a commercial break, Adam was discussing whether or not these teams chasing on the front have any reason to panic, because the time gap appears to be going in the wrong direction for them. As we got our live coverage today, just over 2 minutes, it's crept up over the kilometres since, and it's now just over 3 minutes.
The main reason I'm saying it is because it is majority is a crosswind / cross tailwind before they turn after the bonus sprint, with around 15 k's to go, just under, then they turn back into a headwind. So for this peloton to catch them in, what, 35 k's really into that tailwind, they're going to have to get the hammer down. They will bring it back quickly into a headwind and the bunch sprint, but I'm telling you, an hour and a half, not even an hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes left of racing, probably hour and 15 at this speed.
Oh yeah, it'll be an hour 10, I'd imagine. It's going to be rattled off pretty quickly from here on in towards the finish, you'd imagine, because the speed will get increasingly higher as the sprinters' teams jostle for position towards the end. So I think it will be a fast old finish. Have you looked at the wind forecast for today, Robbie?
Yes, I have, and there's not a whole lot of wind. It seems the maximum gusts will be up to around 21 kilometres an hour. As they come in towards the finish, it will be a head crosswind, but I don't expect it, as we've said in the past couple of days, it's just not quite strong enough that you'd think it would split the bunch. It's something, the maximum gusts around the same as what we saw a couple of days ago when we had the bunch sprint, which was won by Caden Grove. So enough for the riders to feel and give a bit of shape to the peloton, but certainly not enough to split it.
I think that we, as cycling fans, have been unlucky this year when it comes to wind direction. I mean, the Vuelta a España... Left, boys. We've had so many stages where you looked at the route, and I think today's stage is an example of that. It's so open, there's some long stretches of road, but the wind has either been not strong enough in multiple days in the Grand Tours this year. I'm thinking particularly of the Tour de France and here at the Vuelta Espana in the Netherlands. It's either not been strong enough or it's been blowing in the wrong direction. We've had very few echelons in Grand Tours this year.
Such a shame. We say that in the way that if it was blown to pieces on stage one, we'd be gutted as well because people would have lost a lot of time. And this doesn't work in a favour either. 20k an hour is definitely not enough, but as you say about the wrong direction, even gust towards the end, it does pick up towards the end of the day. They've got a headwind finish for the last 15k, so if you lost time, you've got big enough, strong enough guys with GC riders. Generally riding into a headwind would benefit guys if they have lost time.
Guys, I think this is a good time to talk about olives.
Go on.
I don't know if anyone's spoken about olives, but as you can see, right, left, straight ahead and behind them, surrounding them anytime, and anyone who's been in Andalusia would be aware of the fact that they grow olives, and a lot of them. In fact, Spain accounts for the bulk of the world production of olive oil. And in particular, Andalusia accounts for 70% of Spain's production of olive oil. Andalusia produces some 800,000 tonnes of olive oil per year. It's the absolute capital of the olives in Spain. And Andalusia produces, in fact, Jaén, which is the olive capital, it's about 100 kilometres from where the riders are now. It produces more olive oil in the province of Jaén than all of Italy combined. So when it comes to arguments about who are the kings of the olive oil, the Spanish maintain it is them because they grow the most, and they also say theirs is the best quality. That's another argument. And,
I was going to say, I know what the counter argument from Italians would be. Quality, not quantity.
Yes, of course. So that'll be the eternal argument. But when it comes to quantity, then Spain has got it. Also in the area, they do grow a lot of grapes too. More of
Robbie,
the wine varieties. Yeah.
Onto the olive thing as well. I don't know if you noticed, Montilla, where the finish town is today, they actually have an olive museum.
They do. And you know what else is going on there today until I think Tuesday is the grape harvest festival of Montilla as well. So today, if the riders are there on time, they get a move on, get there, take the shoes off, maybe give their feet a wash, they can take part in the first grape crush of the harvest season. Well,
everyone, I'm sure you're happy you've tuned in to this report, because I have some more facts for you as well. As you just mentioned, Robbie, Montilla is home of wine, and there is a fair in Montilla where the finish town is today, where they have a wine festival each year, which is the largest in the region of Andalusia. Anything, Dan?
Our producer gave me a fact to read out just then, but I didn't quite hear it. There's a famous wine sherry from the region as well. Oh, Pedro Jimenez. Thank you very much, Pete. Well, back to the racing now, back to the riders, because we are going to hear from the stage winner a couple of days ago, Caden Groves.
Caden, do you feel more relaxed on beforehand on a stage like this, with already a win in this Vuelta today?
Not so much. A little bit, sure. It's nice to already have one win, but we want to win more. So there's still pressure on ourselves to perform and try and get another stage.
So what are you expecting? Because a lot of people always say with 1,800 altitude meters, it's an ideal breakaway day as well. How easy is this to control?
Well, nothing's easy to control, but I mean, it all depends on how the composition of the breakaway at the start of the day. We keep teams like Alpecin and Trek and UAE out of them, then they should also help control for the stage with their sprinters.
So what is about your tactics today of your team? Are you planning to control the stage today?
Yeah, for sure. Tactically, I mean, today is perfect for me. And we have a strong guys here to do the lead out and control the stage. No more focus on GC, having lost Simon, so we're here for stages now, and today's one of them.
Lars, how did life change for you just a little bit after that big win 2 days ago?
Yeah, it's been nice, actually. I got to enjoy the stage yesterday with no pressure and not too many changes. I mean, still hungry to win more, and yeah, hopefully it's just the beginning. Thanks, guys.
Caden Groves, one of the big favourites for today's stage, but they'll need to bring these 3 riders back to put themselves in with a chance, of course. And the body language of these 3 up front suggests to me that one of them did the invisible throttle sign and said, let's go flat out from here towards the finish. They've been not hanging about, I think you can say. And there might be a mild panic in the main peloton at some point. Going through that tunnel a few minutes ago, we saw it was very strung out. I think the speed has significantly increased in this peloton, Robbie.
Yeah, well, I think the peloton, they're getting the instructions from the team directors who are, of course, watching the screens, not while they're driving. We all know that now, that we have 2 directors in the car, one driving, one on all the devices, getting all the information. And as soon as they see the signs that the breakaway is really trying to, as you say, turn the throttle, then they give that instruction back to the peloton. It's time to pick things up because they're going for it. It's often a little bit of a game of cat and mouse between the break and the peloton as the day goes on, and we rarely see anymore that case of the peloton missing the jump when the break really turns up the heat. Communication, all the information that's coming through is sort of put paid to those sort of surprise accelerations anymore.
More teams add their might to the chase. I don't think Bora Hansgrohe have been chasing all day long, but you can see that they've added a man onto the front now, alongside Luke Durbridge, who's just coming through. The rider there from Trek Segafredo, I think, is Dario Cataldo.
I think it's Bernard.
Oh, it is Bernard, yes. So multiple teams at the front, and I'm pretty sure I saw Alpecin de Koning there as well. Another opportunity for their sprinter who's yet to win a stage, Tim Malier. Of course, only 2 sprinters have won in this race so far, one of whom's not here, Sam Bennett of Bora Hansgrohe, and then Caden Groves, who we just spoke to. So everybody else looking to get themselves off the mark on today's finish. Refreshments, very much needed on a day like today. It is incredibly hot out there for the riders once again at the Vuelta a España. That was Joan Bau, the 25-year-old of Euskaltel Euskadi, in that bright orange and in very famous kit. Had a bit of a hiatus should I say. Had been a top-level team for a long time, lighting up the mountains of the Tour de France and the Tour of Spain for many years. Unfortunately, the sponsorship subsided for a number of years, and so they were absent from the peloton. But great to see them back, albeit with not quite the same budget that they had before, at least relative to the other big budgets of the World Tour peloton these days. So their pro-continental division, I think they do have ambitions of one day getting themselves back into the top flight of professional cycling teams, and I, for one, hope they manage that.
That gap has come down rather quickly, hasn't it? 2:35 now in the space of, what, 4K, 5K? And for me, this does suit Mads Pedersen a little bit more than what a normal sprint would be. Rolling terrain, they've had to pick the pace up quite significantly coming into the finish. That'll ultimately make it harder for the other sprinters. Yes, they get the draft of sat in the wheel, the teammates around them. But just that last hour with it being a lot faster than it really needed to be definitely suits the likes of Mads Pedersen a little bit more than it would do I'm going to say, the pure sprinter. There's not really any pure sprinters in here. They're all quite capable of climbing.
Well, how would you rate Dan McClay's chances today?
Dan's a tough one. I was last picked today in our predictions game on the breakaway, and the only reason that I didn't go for him is just because of the likes of Pedersen in here. If it was a pure sprinters, the likes of Caleb, well, not Caleb can also sprint quite well uphill, but the likes of Groenewegen, the likes of Mark Cavendish, if they were in here, I'd have probably said, yeah, he's in with a good chance today. But with the likes of Pedersen in here, Danny Van Poppel, where they can produce very good results on these sort of finishes slightly uphill, I just don't think he'll be quite on the mark. Sorry, Dan.
He does have one fewer rider to help him. Sorry, Robbie. I don't know if I missed this, or I did miss this earlier. I'm not sure if anybody else saw a graphic that I didn't happen to see, but his teammate, the Frenchman Gernalec, abandoned La Vuelta today after apparently being involved in a crash earlier on in today's stage. So Arkea Samsic, having only started with 7 after Nairo Quintana decided not to start the race. They'd already lost De La Place, and they've now lost Gernalec as well. So Dan McClay just with the 4 riders alongside him to help him in towards the finish. Sorry, Robbie, go on.
Yeah, I'm going to throw into the mix a guy who I really do believe can win on a finish like this is Mike Turnison from Jumbo-Visma. I mean, he's a real specialist in an uphill finish. The stage he won in the Tour de France in 2019 in Brussels was a long uphill drag, not particularly steep, but certainly one that affected all the sprinters' legs. And he's been riding really well. Of course, they won the opening team time trial, but he was then 4th on the first bunch sprint in Utrecht on stage 2, won by Sam Bennett. So Mike Turnison, if he doesn't have to be on the front and guide Primoz Roglic in, which he might have to, who knows, but if he doesn't have to, and all is safe with Primoz, then look out for Mike Turnison.
I guess the only question mark hanging over the Dutchman is how he's feeling after the crash that he had in one of the first stages once we entered Spain.
Well, there's that, definitely, but there's also the other reason of getting involved in that bunch sprint, the risk of him crashing, coming down, the support that Primoz Roglic still need. Will the team allow him to get stuck in as much as that? See a flat tyre here.
Maida with a flat tyre. Been a disappointing race for the Swiss riders so far this Vuelta a España. It's 31st on the general classification. We haven't really seen the best of Bahrain Victorious in general, I would say, in the mountainous days of the race. Of course, Fred Wright's been up the road on a couple of occasions. But like he might have had a crash there as well.
Maybe, just possibly. I didn't see any marks.
Maybe just frustrated by the length of time it's taking to get his team car to attend to him. Oh.
Just a mechanical by the looks of things. Chains looked to be off his slip. Well, it looked like he was slipping with his gears a little bit, which will be odd in this day and age. If there was problems with his gears, you rarely see it now with all the modern technology. But
I think we've seen it a lot this year. A lot of dropped chains, I seem to remember, happening in
But
this
it was
season.
the new group set that came out with Shimano, the new Shimano group set. I don't think the 54 chain rings were made, so they had to run the old chain rings on the new group set, which the chain was slightly different, 12 speed and 11. So there was a lot of jumping of the chains, especially in the classics.
Well, on that note, Adam, it's time to say goodbye to you. I know you're off to prepare for the breakaway show later on. It's time to welcome Carlton Kirby back into the commentary box.
Hello.
Good break, Carlton?
Yeah, fantastic, actually. Chicken tikka in a naan. Doesn't get better than that. I was listening to you talking about John Degenkolb, actually. Do you remember Matera when he came up it was an absolute torrent, nearly washed us down the hill.
I do remember that.
We were in a commentary position and it actually washed the chocks away, bearing in mind we were on a hill which was about 10 or 12%. The water was about 15 centimetres deep, and we were on the top of the hill, so you can imagine just how much that cloud burst affected the day. It did dry up just for John Degenkolb to steer through some puddles, but managed to grind up a hillside on 2013 like I'd never seen a sprinter do, Dan. He was amazing.
He was fantastic. I mean, it was an incredibly reduced sprint, wasn't it? I think there was a couple of crashes on the way into the finish. What I remember about that day was that I think we were the only commentators left in the commentary position.
True. Like the captains of the Titanic who stayed where we were.
I distinctly remember the now team manager of Cofidis making a dash for it, Cedric Vasseur, whereas we put our lives on the line to call that finish in.
Well, I remember when they said abandon commentary position, and I seem to remember that the French pair were gone in a flash. The Italians kind of grumpily sort of got everything together, like, why is my life so terrible? And we soldiered on with the commentary position leaning over at an angle, and they jacked us back up, put the chocks back where they needed to be. I was proud of you that day, Dan.
Thanks, mate.
We're going to be hearing from Zander in a moment. Maybe it was just ignorance. We didn't realise how much danger we were in.
I think it was probably that, yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think the man who fell on the final corner was Matteo Trentin, if I remember rightly, because I think we were both backing him that day, and it was Degenkolb that came up. Gosh, it's amazing what you can remember from 2013. Matera, amazing place. They used it in the Passion of the Christ movie. It was where the troglodytes were, and Dan and I ended up in a cave restaurant, which he was completely uninterested in. I remember lecturing you. Let's hear from Sanders, shall we? I think he's talking about the finish line today, which has got a couple of steps to it.
So this morning at the start, everyone was thinking a bunch sprint in Montilla. For instance, for riders like Caden Groves or Tim Merlier maybe, or Danny van Poppel, who's in a great form in this Vuelta. But if you look at the race right now, 700 meters to go, even 300 meters from here, you can see it. It goes up 5%. So will this be a bunch sprint? Who knows? But it's going to be particular for riders with a very strong sprint like Mats Pedersen, maybe John Degenkolb would have a great chance to win here, or punchers like Alejandro Valverde. It's going to be very difficult for riders like Tim Merlier when it ramps up to 5%, all the way up to Montilla finish. 700 meters, 5%. It's going to be very interesting, this finish today.
Robbie, how would you have approached today?
With a few deep breaths, I'd imagine, with a finish like that. But as a sprinter, I would have gone in, knowing what I know from, seeing some video and some pictures of the finish and what I've seen of the profiles. I would have been happy to let my team ride and set pace and try and bring everything back and give it everything in the bunch sprint with the belief that I could get to the top of that one and be in contention for the win. It's one of those where you are likely to get a real mix of pure sprinters, those punchers, a climber who can really position themselves well and just hold that high intensity in a long drawn out sprint and also potentially finish in the first 5 or 6. So it's a real mixed bag sprint, but the pure sprinters, they can definitely believe in their chances.
Dan, do you think on these long, wide open plains that we've been dealing with, albeit with plenty of olives around for you to stop and admire, do you think there's a chance that brains can fade a little bit? I mean, they'll be back in sharp focus late on, but you must drift on days like this, surely.
That can be why it becomes more dangerous on such a quiet day, because you're right, concentration ebbs a little bit. The level of concentration that you would have when it's flat out racing and you're completely concentrated on what you're doing on the wheel in front just fades a little bit when there's not too much going on. But I think that adrenaline will be starting to flow at this point. If I look at the gaps opening up towards the front of the peloton here, it's definitely started to get faster.
I think this might get a little bit brutal, to be honest. I think it's a wake-up call for everyone around. All of a sudden, they will have been tanking along within the bunch down, out of the breeze, and then all of a sudden, there's nobody to their left and right. It's all strung out. There's a couple of gaps out there. It's like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, because the gap continues to climb, there comes a point where they're like, hold on a second, we're going to have to go a bit faster now if we want to catch this break before we get to the finish. And the longer that goes on, the faster it has to be at the end by necessity to make sure that it's a bunch sprint. Had they kept it at the 2 minutes, I don't think the speed would need to be as high as it is at the moment, but they've had to start pulling this breakaway back from 3 minutes rather than 2.
So a question of a case of just having to make up for work that they didn't do earlier in the day. You're seeing it now. Sort of big compressions, they just came to this climb, and there's plenty of that today. Dan, I know you're heading off, we'll be seeing you on the breakaway show afterwards. 1,700 meters and more of altitude gain today. And you can see from these pictures as well, there's some proper kickers here.
There are. I think most people out there that go out on a ride, if they did 1,700 metres of climbing, they'd be like, that is a decent amount of climbing in one day. Thank you very much. But when you look at the other profiles and compare it, it just makes it look very flat. But yeah, there are all these undulations, and one of which you're seeing now, and one of which they'll all be seeing right at the finish. But I love the design of this finish. I think the ones that open it up to all sorts of different kinds of riders are the most interesting, particularly when, if Sandra is right, it's a little bit steeper than the race profile suggests. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting finale today.
Thanks, Dan. We'll be hearing more from yourself, Adam and Orla, after the race today. We'll be welcoming Sean Kelly back into the comms box in a few moments' time. Robbie, this double peak that we've just seen, and this is a kind of an entree to the rest of the day, and you can see from these gorgeous camera angles that are being delivered to us right now, this is proper rolling terrain from now on in, basically.
Yeah, it is proper rolling terrain. They've got one sort of longer sustained hill coming up, and then quite a long, well, equally long downhill section where they pick up a lot of speed on the way into Montilla. So they'll be over the lumpiest part of the course in the next 10 or so kilometres, and then start that final rush into Montilla. Of course, the climb up towards the finish, or let's not call it a climb, a hill up towards the finish. But we've been talking a lot about the sprinters and which guys have a chance and why. And, you know, with a pace being set like this, quite an intense chase, I think it is swinging to the advantage of a guy like Mads Pedersen, that classic style sprinter with so much base that I think that the harder it'll be all the way in will suit him better. But it also is suitable for someone who can make a late attack within that last kilometre, just bounce away before the sprinters are prepared to make their effort. If someone can throw it out there, a la Philippe Gilbert, who's ending his career this year as well. Not here in the Vuelta, but you get my drift. That type of attack. Yeah, well, that sort of attacking rider is, that sort of move is one that can be pulled off today.
And exactly, as if by magic, the crystal ball is clearly been polished by Ron McEwen. This is Trek Segafredo just exchanging at the moment with Bora Hansgrohe. Bike exchange as well, just not prepared to let, or indeed quite willing, I should say, to engage with this, not prepared to let the breakaway get too much of its head out there, which is fantastic. We've been talking about olive oil, by the way. There are 200 different kinds in this area, and much of it, occasionally, erroneously, and, well, it gets claimed that it comes from elsewhere. 32.8 kilometres to go. There's fantastic olive oil here. Spanish olive oil, slightly nuttier, by the way, than the slightly grassier flavour of Italian olive oil. But obviously, with so many different kinds, there's 200 different variations here. You just never know. What we do know is that these guys have decided to get a bit slippery. They've gone on the attack, and it's been responded to on the rolling terrain, which we're now engaged with by teams that would like to make life difficult. Not only for the breakaway, of course, they'll have to give them some respect because they're accomplished breakaway riders, these guys. We've seen them in the break on a number of occasions. I think it's at least 3 times for these guys, including today, each of them. Obviously sharing the duty on different days. Mads Pedersen's Trek Segafredo have just come to the front. They started as we came into this climb, which you can see we're on at the moment. 1,766 metres of altitude gain, to be precise, today is what they're going to have to do in vertical metres gained. That's a lot of climbing. And a lot of it is going to be on the approach. You see the green jersey as well, just making sure that nothing silly happens. Getting himself up there on the right-hand side. In fact, he's on the shoulders of Caden Groves and indeed Team Bike Exchange. So Trek want to make this difficult. Bike Exchange, likewise. Bora Hansgrohe for Danny Van Poppel, who was in support, of course, at the beginning of this race of Sam Bennett, has, like an open book, declared that this is a stage he will be going for it on. I love that, when a rider just has the confidence to say, no, it's my kind of day. Sean Kelly, is it your kind of day, this one? I think you'd have had a good old dig at this one.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. I know that, Sean, but back in the day.
Yes, back in the day it would have been a nice finish. The uphill finishes, I was able to perform quite well. The big flat run-ins against the big sprinters. It was always that little bit off the real outright speed of those guys.
Well, let's wait and see how today pans out. You can see, or you've heard, that Ben Turner, perhaps for Ineos Grenadiers, might have an option today. He'll be led in by Luke Plapp. That would be something special. It would have been Ethan Hayter, but of course he is no longer with us. One of those who has had to go home, somebody who hasn't, is Juan Ayuso. If you're only just joining us, tested positive for COVID, but had such a low viral load. So basically he's had it and got over it. And of course, the length of time that it takes you to recover from COVID can vary enormously between individuals. So he may well even have had it just hours prior and fought it off. Anyway, the doctors have said he has such a light viral load. This is UCI, as well as race, as well as organisers. They've all come together. They've looked at the data and said he's okay. He is not going to be infectious to anybody. But there are riders here who went home before they got their viral load readings. And so they're no longer here, I should say. And they won't be very happy about it. This is a problem when it's all kicking off. You go and pick up your nose bag, and if you don't empty it quickly enough, it billows like a spinnaker, Robbie, and it can hamper you.
Yep, turns into a parachute. Reminds me of the drag cars when they finish their run and pop the parachute out the back. And now here's one of the arts where he's stuffing it into his pocket. But the other thing you sometimes see is riders panic a bit. They want to get rid of it so fast, and they go to throw it away. And an empty feed bag doesn't throw away very well. Catches the wind and often just goes straight backwards and into the chain and the derailleur of the unfortunate rider who is behind you in many cases, and ruins their day completely. Or even worse, about 3 years ago, I think it was, one of the riders, might have been Mühlberger in the Tour of Flanders, he went to throw his feed bag away. As he went to throw it, the handle looped around his own brake lever, and he threw himself completely off the bike.
I remember that spectacular dismount. We all held up cards. Hello, gymnastics.
Most embarrassing moments.
Oh, I've seen one where a rider has actually thrown one of the bags, and it's ended up as a hat on a spectator.
Oh, that must have been one of the heavyweight musettes then to get that far. I've got to thank Dan Lloyd for the lead out on that one. He says how well a musette flies depends on whether it's made of lightweight or heavyweight fabric.
We're on to you.
Getting in on the flag conversation. Hey, but something about the race. And talking about this finish, I said it does lend itself to an attacker, someone jumping away in the vein of Philippe Gilbert. I started looking through the start list to find the most likely candidates for that sort of move. And the fact that Pascal Ackermann has not been at his best and not really competitive in the sprints, I'm thinking Juan Sebastian Molano, that's a real opportunity for him. He can sprint along with the best of them, but not really match them for speed. But I think that can get him a gap, and he can hold off on that climb up to the finish. And watch for a cheeky move, maybe, by Carapaz.
Fred Wright's cheeky enough as well to go long. Here's Pedersen.
Mats, what's the secret about today? How to win a stage like today, you think?
Well, I think pretty much it's going to be a sprint, so let a small breakaway go and then control it, hopefully with other teams, and then yeah, the sprint suits me really well. So of course it's going to be a tough sprint. It's almost 1K with 4.5–5%, so it's going to be tough, but it fits me really well.
There you are, another open book, Sean. There's plenty of riders declaring themselves today.
Yes, well, you know, what can you say if you're a rider like Pedersen, like Van Poppel? Well, you have to say, well, you know, this is a finish that I can do quite well on, and you can say also, well, I'm hoping that I will have the good legs in the end of the day, because when you go through a stage like this, you know, you go through times where you can have a little bit of a difficult time, and you're always hoping that, you know, that's early in the day and you start feeling better. Of course, when the race really gets heated up and the adrenaline flow, all of that, you know, you just you come up with the occasion as well, and normally you can do that. So those guys, they know that this is the day, and they can't really hide it in the interviews.
Just looking at the back there, that was Kellen O'Brien, who's usually last lead-out man standing for Caden Groves. Not sure he's having a bad day. He looked like he was actually spent on that last climb, Robbie. And that will be one less approach rider of support for Caden Groves. I'm not sure it's a Caden Groves kind of day, is it today? He's got one in the bag already. It would be a Bobby bonus if he came good on these ramps in this kind of company.
And that's the thinking at Bike Exchange, Jaco. They have got absolutely nothing to lose. They've got no more Simon Yates in the race. They're not riding for GC. They don't have a specialist climber outside of Lucas Hamilton, but also, he'd have to get in a break with riders he can really tackle in his current form. But on the other hand, Caden Groves, you've just got to have a go. I mean, you can't sit back and say, oh, maybe it's too hard. Maybe there's someone else who's a little bit better at this type of finish. So I think it's the right thing to do, to throw everything at it. Give Caden the confidence that the team's prepared to ride for him, and he might just be able to pull it off. He's been riding well uphill, and for a guy who looks as bulky as he does, so muscular, he actually rides uphill really well. So I think he'll acquit himself well on this finish climb. But I just want to go back to what I was saying before about possible attackers. You mentioned also Fred Wright and Tick. That's another one. But I was just going to get to the others, but we're going to that little interview with Mads Pedersen. From Israel Premier Tech, the combo, Patrick Bevan and Daryl Impey. Impey is a proven finisher on a tough finish. He's beaten Michael Matthews this season in Catalunya. He is such a proven winner, Daryl Impey. He's all class, and this is a finish that really, really suits him. And at the same time, I was just working my way through the list. Greg Henderson, who works with Israel Premier Tech, sent me a message. He said, do not forget Impey. This is really one for him. And Hendy, I agree.
So do I. And so does Impey himself, actually. So there you go. Just check the pace at the front at the moment. Really interesting. Just as Robert was talking there, Trek Segafredo came up and loaded up Mads Pedersen. Essentially, they gave him all the bottles and the gels that he wanted, 25 kilometres out. He took his time to finish the bottles he'd got, so he didn't take some extra weight. He's got one in the cage at the moment. That's clearly what he believes to be enough. He's got just what he needs to not have to bother taking his hands off the bars a little bit later on. So the focus is absolutely where he wants it to be. This is Ryan Mullen that's setting the pace at the moment. The Irishman really digging in. And this, of course, is for Danny Van Poppel. But it's Trek Segafredo that are tucked in, and they are lined out here, and this is to punish all the other quick men out there. And Danny Van Poppel knows this, so he's tucked in on the back wheel of Mads Pedersen. The approach has already started, Sean. It's absolutely hell for leather.
Yes, it is, and it has been for a number of kilometres. And we can see up front, they have upped the pace quite a long time back, and they are pushing on big time. And this 54 seconds. It's becoming a little bit of a concern here for the teams that have been riding all day, and that's something you do not want to happen. That you allow them too much time go into the final 10 kilometres, and then they might put up a surprise performance. The three riders that have been out here, so that's the reason they are pushing on. The teams there, we can see Ryan Mullen from Bora, we can see the riders from Trek Segafredo, we can see other riders starting to disappear, and that tells teams disappearing here who have been on the front for most of the day now, starting to feel the pressure of trying to control this one. And when we talked about the breakaway in the day, and I was the one who said, well, this is going to be an easy one, but it's not turning out to be that easy.
Love the way JP Lopez comes up, hands a bottle there to Mads Pedersen. Mads Pedersen says, I don't want a bottle. He said, don't drink it, throw it over yourself. That's precisely what he did. He went, oh yeah, cheers mate. Douses himself. The team's looking after Mads Pedersen, and this is a formation display of aggression here, Robbie.
It is, and I think this is something that Mads Pedersen would have asked the team for, a really hard finale, because the harder it's going to be on the run in to the finish, I think the more and more it's going to suit Mads Pedersen, as opposed to someone like Van Poppel, Groves, as good as they are. I think Pedersen just has that little bit more as that classic style rider. He's proven to be the strongest of the fast men uphill. So the harder it is, the more he can wear down everybody else, then the better it's going to be for him. Sort of start to just cut off the legs of the competition before the sprint even starts.
Well, it's an intermediate sprint as well, let's not forget. Mads Pedersen will be quite happy to garner some more points in that competition. He's greedy for points, Sean. He wants to make this as emphatic a green jersey competition win as possible.
Well, I think he's quite a long ways ahead, 184 points, and Soler just 96. So yeah, it's not an easy one here, and you can see Remco Evenepoel, like, he have 86 points. So the mountain stages to come, depending on what happened with the breaks, and if the GC men start to making ground there, he could be a danger one. And we know Vuelta, of course, for the past number of years, it's been a lot of times where the GC man have won it. And we remember the year, Carlton, that Chris Froome was fighting for the
Trentin, wasn't it?
Yes, in the final stage into Madrid. So I think that's why he's concerned as well. The riders there, are down in that classement behind him. He wants to get every point going here, and he's going to go for the intermediate sprint here as we come through it.
Yeah, Mathieu Trentin that day said, what on earth did I work so hard for? Because Chris Froome threw the bike at the very last. I think it was there was only 1 point in it in the end, if I'm not mistaken. And Chris Froome snaffled the points jersey as well as winning overall, spectacularly so. So has today been in its own his own quiet way. But just wait for this intermediate sprint, Robbie. It's coming in about 7 kilometres time, 7 or 8, but it's actually on a switchback. It's a hairpin, essentially. We'll go through the sprint, and then there's a very, very focused left-hand turn, which brings us to a southerly direction. And if there is even if it's just a kitten's cough of wind here, they will feel it after they've made that turn.
They will, and the intermediate sprint is on the top of a hill as well at around 6% gradient. So I think they're quite light to catch this group and have Mads Pedersen be able to take maximum points if he possibly can at the intermediate sprint, because speaking about that phenomenon we've had in the Vuelta of GC riders, climbers winning the points classification, Mads Pedersen needs to get all the points that he can. When you look through the rest of this Vuelta and the stages that are still to come, after today there are 2 more flat stages, but there are 6 mountain stages. So the likes of Remco Evenepoel, Marc Soler, they can still make huge inroads on Mads Pedersen's lead. So he'll need to, every day where he can, try and get to the intermediate sprint to keep taking those 20 points to fend them off, because they've got a lot of stages they can score on at the finish.
Oh, the pace, Sean, is absolutely relentless here.
Yes, it is, and we can see it's Trek Segafredo who have the numbers up here at the moment, and a lot of the teams we had doing the chase, they have started to back off a bit. Is that because they're starting to feel the fatigue, or is they saying, well, now we have it in control, 20 plus kilometres to go, 37 seconds, leave the team there's on the front that want to control with a number of riders? And there's also that question as well about the intermediate sprint. Do they want to try and close them down before that? But yeah, I think that's going to be a difficult one to do. But we can see at the rear of the peloton the way it's getting stretched out. The pace is real fast.
Just in case you're wondering, it was 2017 when Chris Froome beat Mathieu Trentin in the points competition on the final stage. Trentin won, but Chris Froome threw the bike to pick up 5 points by finishing 11th. He raced it with JJ Lobato. Ed Toons was around him as well, and he threw the bike, snaffled the points. And Trentin said, well, what was all that about then? He raced the entire race and lost the green jersey by 2 points to Chris Froome, who'd taken it overall. That's a man who got greedy, and that is a man who feasted himself on success. And it's also a man, of course, who's now just trying to rebuild himself and his Grand Tour credentials. And we wish Chris Froome all the very best. Today, though, it's about a different complexion entirely. And that green jersey, they've kicked over the hornet's nest, but it looks like there's a bit more calm right now. It'll pick back up again. Hurt goes on the nose here, though, Robbie. This is going to be a big run-in, and for late bottles, which are being delivered to back pockets here, this is gels and bottles. This is a difficult time to take it, but they've only got 4Ks to go before that protocol indeed winds out. Get your sustenance where you possibly can.
Well, everybody's got their work cut out at the moment, whether you're one of these 3 in the break, riding on the front chase, and the more in the peloton trying to bring a fast man towards the front and protect him, or indeed be back to the car or on the side of the road collecting bidons and handing those off. Everybody has something to do, and despite this stage, is that once again, short duration, it's been incredibly intense, and it's going to be one that the riders are really going to be feeling with these big mountain stages coming over the next couple of days. But that last shot of the peloton, I also noticed, and I'd spoken about Bevan and Impey, who was Israel Premier Tech on the left side of screen, right-hand side of the road. There they are, closest to camera in the white and the blue. So Chris Froome, he's up there in second wheel. He's doing his part to bring Daryl Impey towards the front, and Impey, he is a very real chance today in this sprint. I'm really liking him today.
Yeah, well, they're liking the prospect quite clearly. They're setting their stall out. First to do so, of course, Trek Segafredo, and setting the pace is JP Lopez, who gave the bottle for a shower to Mads Pedersen. The green jersey will be tucked in safely at the moment. He's just preserving himself just a little bit. There he is with a phalanx of 3 of his teammates around him. Great teamwork by them, and likewise, as Robbie pointed out, Daryl Impey doing a job here. There are bonus seconds, by the way, up for grabs as well at this intermediate sprint, 3, 2 and 1. So perhaps it may well be that it's more than just the sprinters that are involved here, Sean, with some bonus seconds to hand. But the terrain itself hard to read with some of these pickups. We were looking a few moments ago and saying that the pace had diminished, but there was a speedo. It wasn't the average, it was the speedo, and it was 43 kilometers per hour. That was on a 6% ramp. That's not bad, Sean.
No, it's not bad, and you can see here, it is getting quite tense on the front of the peloton, and yeah, I think the intermediate sprint, that time bonus, the way it's going at the moment, I don't think we'll see any of the GC men trying something. And at this rate, if it's really going slow going through, sometimes someone might take it by surprise and just make a burst in the final 30 meters before the line. But that's not going to happen here, and it's going to be pretty much full on through the sprint here. And we can see here 25 seconds. I think they're in the peloton here. They know now that they have it pretty much under control, and it's just a little bit of waiting, not giving it all. But they were a point there 4 or 5 kilometers further back the road. They were really pushing on, and I think they were concerned that these 3 might be stronger than they had anticipated. And if this group had been 6 riders, for example, well, then this could be a really hectic final, and it could be a difficult one for the peloton to close them down in the end, the way the 3 are giving it all day here and still being able to put up a big fight.
Calm before the storm, Robbie.
Well, calm before the storm, but the wind is picking up just a little bit. Maximum gusts up to 13 knots, so around 23 kilometres an hour. So they'll be wary of that when they get to that intermediate sprint. As you said, it's almost a hairpin turn. They go to the left and they head back in a southwesterly direction, and the wind coming in from the west, so the wind will be hitting them from the right-hand side. We tend to say that wind above 30 kilometres an hour is more likely to cause splits in the peloton, but after such a tough day, and already the 13th day into this Vuelta, just takes one tired person to lose the wheel in the wrong spot, and it can cause absolute chaos.
You're absolutely right, Robbie, and we've got some real compression points as well. There is a rise at about 3 kilometres. And then we go downhill and we screen towards a left-hander at about 2.4 kilometres from home. There's a second left before the right-hander at 2 kilometres. Then the road straightens out with a couple of roundabouts to deal with. We'll be going straight over those. Hopefully they're wide enough to accommodate that, because just after the Flamme Rouge, with about 750 metres to go, there's a right-hander. And then at the 500 mark, when they're climbing, it's not a straight climb. They go right, they go left. It's a chicane at which unwinds from about 600 out to about 500 out, and that's where meters, that is. That's where we are talking with the 5, 6 and 7% of the maximum. It does flatten onto a little plateau, so the finish line is actually on a shelf, but they've got to get there. And with the twists and turns, with everyone getting very, very busy, I do fear that we're going to carry a lot of pace past the 3 kilometre to go marker into that 90 degree with 2.5 kilometres to go. Sean, it could be mayhem, this.
Yes, it could, and the uphill finish is, always a problem when you have that number of kilometres where it goes up steadily and then it kicks up in that final kilometre a bit more of a percentage. And if it's not being pulled on by some of the teams in the front, can keep the pace really high, then you can get crowded out, and that is the problem here for a lot of the riders. You know, you can be in the top 5-7 riders, and it's just not going fast enough on the front, and then there's a flush of riders come with a team and they just crowd you out. And if you get crowded out on an uphill, well then, you know, you have to make an effort to move up again, and every little effort before that sprint that you can pay for in the final run to the line when you have to open up your sprint.
Well, we no bonus seconds for anyone but the break here.
Well, they take the sprint, the intermediate sprint, won by the break. That's John Bolt who goes through. And here at the back says, that is day done for me. And that is Julius Vandenberg out of the peloton. Mads Pedersen, of course, it is, who rolls across, takes the remaining points, 12 seconds behind the break. Now, we've talked a lot, you know, about this final climb up to the finish and the sprint that they face. But there's actually 2 climbs in the final part of this race, and that section from kilometre 4 to go till 3 to go, the 1K section of just over 4%. I think that's going to be pivotal. Depends how hard they tackle that section, how much they can hurt the sprinters. The likes of maybe Ineos Grenadiers with Richard Carapaz and Ben Turner give themselves a chance. Riders from Israel Premier Tech who want to make that a little bit harder and swing the advantage towards Daryl Impey, surviving that a bit better than the true fast men of the peloton. So that section, I'm really interested to see how they tackle that from 4 to 3 to go.
Yeah, well, they're actually climbing from 5 out, aren't they, as well, with only a slightly moderated incline to get to that 4%. So it's going to be wearing. And you can see with this spectacular shot at the moment, almost looks otherworldly, doesn't it? And they're all sorting themselves out. Even Arkea Samsic. Danny McClay will be going for it with Clément Rousseau to help him. Don't be surprised if one of the other strong men who can go very well on a ramp, like Kentin Pacher, might thrive today. Just pondering who's going to be a feature at the end. Fabi Leinhardt, the Swiss from Groupama France-Niger, backed up by Miles Scottson. We have Bullens from Lotto Soudal potentially. Will Cedric do the job? He'll have to do it on his own. As will John Degenkolb, maybe with Joris Neuhaus. Degenkolb's been lively of late, and he loves a ramp, as we've seen historically through his career, and he seems to have found his sprinting mojo again. Ezekere and Yetzabol, if he's got over being in the breakaway for much of this race, you might see the Plum boys going for it, Plum centre of the road, I imagine. Carlos Canal has Gotson Martin for Euskaltel Euskadi, as this breakaway continues to hold this 10-second margin. Francisco Galvin for Kern Farmer, just had a puncture not that long ago, so maybe that will have hampered him. Not sure how much he's put back in to getting back in. Mads Pedersen, naturally enough, he is the day's out-and-out favourite, but he will be hampered possibly by Juan Molano. Not sure Ackerman's in the bird seat at the moment within that team as far as sprinting is concerned. Ivo Oliveira will back up Molano, but the Colombian can get into a big old climb if he needs to. Tim Malia, he's got Rob Stannard and Gianni Vermeersch to look after him, so watch out for the boys from the blue, black and red of Alpecin de Koenig. Team Bike Exchange with Caden Groves, of course, he's already got one under his belt, but his lead-out man, his main man, Kellen O'Brien, I'm afraid, found himself just off the back of the peloton a few moments ago. JJ Rojas would be the chosen man for Movistar, not Alejandro Valverde, but it would be nice to see Valverde refinding some of the old vim and vigour on days like this. It would have belonged to him in the past. Daryl Impey, as Roman McEwen was mentioning, backed up by Pat Bevan. Why not? He's got the whole team around him. They're on the right-hand side of the road. They've been encamped there for quite some time. You can see on the other side of the road, the left-hand side, as we look at it now, Ben Turner is indeed being guided up for Ineos Grenadiers. Danny Van Poppel, why not? Adam Blythe's pick. I think he's super strong. No Sam Bennett to look after. Ryan Mullen's been an absolute engine. He was part of the chase down for those who were up the road a little bit earlier on, so Bora will have an option. Brian Coquard, he is talking himself up for today. He's got David Kimmel as well to guide him. Vandenberg from EF Education Easy Post for the men in the pink. Who knows? There is Mads Pedersen with his enhanced margin now. 197 points, 101 clear of Marc Soler, who's picked up points, of course, on the mountains days. Mind you, so has Pedersen. Surely it's got to be him today. Well, if it's not, who else? Fred Wright. Why not? Wright said Fred, but hasn't quite got himself a stage win just yet. But it surely has to be only a matter of time before he actually makes it. Is it going to be today? I'd love to see it. Battistella close constantly, it seems. He was in the break again yesterday. Wanted to push on out of it, out of 32 riders. Nobody joined him. He said, what was all that about? Well, today maybe he'll have the answer. And maybe Mike Turnerson will be given a free hand by Primož Roglic if Roglic doesn't want to go for himself. There's a sort of ramp where Roglic appears, looming brilliantly. Let us see. Those are your contenders. There's so many of them that it's going to be busy out there because all the teams, that's why it's so compact at the moment, they have given this breakaway 17 seconds. Ron McEwen, is this foolish?
No, I think they've realised that they've got them right where they want them, and they don't quite want them back in the peloton just yet. So that chase was quite frantic, it seemed, leading to the intermediate sprint. Didn't quite get there to get maximum points for Mads Pedersen, but they know that 17 seconds, they could take that back in the final 600 metres of this stage, so no panic back there. And it seems everybody's letting the work be done by Trek Segafredo, taking so much responsibility all day. Everybody's talking about Mads Pedersen being the out-and-out favourite, so they're just leaving it completely up to them. So it seems now they're riding a tempo that they feel they can take all the way through this final 10 kilometres to keep Pedersen in position, to keep him primed to ride his sprint on this final hill, and at the same time bring back the break when they want to. No reason to go overly hard at the moment, blow themselves up, just to catch the break a little bit earlier.
Luke Plapp doing a fantastic job, the Aussie champion, on the front of that line of Ineos Grenadiers. Of course, they'll be looking after Carlos Rodriguez, the best placed man in the overall classification. He's just tucked in here as well. It'll be Ben Turner for them. Sean, on a day like this, you kind of drift towards Mads Pedersen, but and maybe dial back some of the pure sprinters. But Dan McLeod clearly looks up for it. He's got the bright yellow jerseys of Team Arkea Samsic for this race, dead centre of the road just for the time being. And you have to factor in fatigue and how riders have taken the rest of this race. We're on stage 13, Sean, and strange things can happen. Some of the quick men that you think, no, the ramp would hamper them, can have their day.
Yes, it can hamper them, and it's all about getting the good position and being in that position in the final kilometre at least, where you do not have to make a move up to gain a number of places, because on an uphill, that's where it really hits you. If it's really going at full bore, you do not want to have to do that. So that is the ingredient here for a lot of the names you have pulled out there of the Startlet Carlton, and there were many of them. But Dan McLeod, he is sprinting really well, and if he can get a real good position where he gets to the point where he gets the open to kick for his sprint, he could do it today and get a stage victory. And he has to be a bit aggressive as well. We've seen him in this race. He was pushed by Merlier on one occasion. We've seen by Danny Van Poppel as well. He pushed out on him and he left him in there. He will be thinking of that. I'm going to be more aggressive in those sprints, and I'm not going to be allowed to, somebody to come and push out or push me off a wheel. So he is going to be up for it, and he knows he's been up there. And when you've been up there a number of times, well, then you've got the confidence. Unless things change in the last number of days suddenly, that you start to run out of energy and you're feeling really fatigued. That changed everything. But I think McLeod is still a lot of energy left to give here, and this sprint is a perfect one for him.
Who's going to go for a hay baler here, Robbie?
Oh, well, as I said the other day, harder to pick than a you-know-what. But look at the peloton. It's wider than it is long at the moment. Big, wide roads, and it seems they're riding straight into a headwind. And Trek Segafredo, they seem to go away from the front a little bit there. And it's more teams just positioning themselves. There's going to be a squeeze eventually, because look how far they're spread across this road. And, there will be a squeeze, and then we're going to see which team makes the acceleration at the right time to take control. But, riding into a headwind, nobody wants to push on with everything they've got just yet. So it's like every team's at the front at the moment. There is the bright yellow of the team, Dan McLeod. Next to them, Jumbo-Visma, bringing Primož Roglic. Cofidis through the middle with Chimolai and Brian Coquard. Astana getting themselves up there with a couple of riders too. Trek Segafredo right in the middle, and Mads Pedersen sitting pretty in the green jersey in fourth wheel.
this is a fantastic roller coaster road, isn't it? It's like hands in the air like you just don't care. Well, keep them on the bars, for goodness sake, because if you want to enjoy a drink at that later on, then I'm afraid you're going to have to stay very, very safe. It is extraordinarily compact. The pace is picking up to its absolute highest. They know that there is a few dodgy corners still to take. We'll talk you in from the 5-kilometre marker once we get there, corner by corner. For the time being, though, it's just a question of keeping yourself and your nose clean at the moment. Vincenzo Nibali coming up to the front, using his experience. This will be for Battistella a little bit later on, but you might have something of a surprise. When I was saying who we're going to get as a hit and hoper, at this sort of pace, it's very difficult to break away from anybody. We're on a climb, and it's 38 kilometres per hour. You can see them grinding into it. There's going to be some tired legs, and perhaps mine, so deep into the race today. And I'm just hoping that everyone stays safe, quite frankly, because we have a lot to deal with in just the next 7.6 kilometres in terms of twists, turns, rises and falls. And let's hope those falls are just metaphorical, shall we? Fall in the terrain is what we want. Jumbo-Visma get themselves up towards the front. This is about protecting GC places. You have to keep your men safe. Those who are battling overall, and Remco Evenepoel knows what it's like to hit the deck, Sean. He doesn't want to do that again, thank you very much. And often the safest place to be is out front.
Yes, well, you have to be in the front, but the problem is here, we can see the way it's so packed with riders all across the road, and this is always a time when you're concerned that nothing happens, nothing goes wrong, that a rider just gets pushed a bit and touches a wheel, and down they go, and a lot of riders go down, and you're concerned about that when you're in this. But you know, you still keep on fighting. You don't back off. If you're going for the sprint here, if you have to be up there for the GC and the team mates are in front of you, you just don't back off. You keep on fighting. You don't allow anybody, you know, to push you or take your place or squeeze in between you, the rider beside you. And you know, that is where the risk comes from. And when it's going like this, you know, it is a concern. And if something go wrong, well, then we could see a lot of riders hitting the deck. And when it speeds up and it gets stretched out, something happen, well, then it gives a little bit more to go around it. You wait and see what way the body of the rider and the bike is sliding. You try and get around it. But here, the way it's all mashed together, it's just in the danger a few kilometres here before they really kick for the final number of kilometres.
Robbie, we've got about 4 kilometres of climbing now.
Yeah, it's going to kick up, as you said, from 5 kilometres to go. It goes up at around 1.5 to 2 to 2.5%. So what we call a false flat. But after that, from kilometre 4 to go through to 3, it's around 4 to 4.5% gradient. So a solid 1 kilometre. And that's where it's going to hinge on for the sprinters, how hard they are forced to ride up that section and how much that is going to burn their sprint legs. Once they get over the top, they've then got 2 kilometres, a little bit of downhill, fast roads, a couple of easy corners as they come into Montilla and then set themselves up for that final climb. But yeah, the drag is starting, and in fact, it's just, they're going to start to feel it already in the legs.
Jay Vine's got himself into a good position here. Oh, you can't give a good man down. There's no mountain points up for grabs, Jay. I think he just wants to share some strength, and thanks to his team who've been looking after him. 3% is what we're dealing with at the moment. You can see a few riders just trying to get themselves into position, having to get out of the saddle to get that impetus going. This is frantic, Sean. We won't actually hit a crest until we get 2.5 kilometres to go. But as Robbie was saying, the incline gets more and more severe. You'll see sections, Sean, short they may well be, of around 7%, even on this approach now.
Yes, well, we can see here, you know, it is frantic, but not 100%, probably 95% frantic at the moment. It will get more as we get, you know, closer to the finish here. And yeah, you have to be in the place on the front end of affairs. If you're interested in getting anything out of the day, you have to be, you know, behind your teammates here, you know, third or fourth position. But the problem is, we can see the road, it opens up a bit, and then it allows more riders to come up on the left-hand side. We can see there, and that is something that you have to, you know, your teammates have to be aware. When they start coming up, you push the pace a bit, and you do not allow them just to come across in front of you, and then you lose 3-4 places very quickly.
JJ Rojas is clearly getting himself into a good position here. Big pickups already coming from Arkeas Damzik. They want a bit more pace here. And the man in the bright day glow yellow here working for Dan McClay, Clement Rousseau, will also be in the frame a little bit later on. Primoz Roglic himself still maintains a little bit of an option here today. I'm not sure it'll be for Mike Turnison. You never know. But with 4.7 kilometres to go, here we are. This is where it flattens very briefly, as you can see, and then it picks up once again. You can see the 4 kilometres to go arch there just ahead of them in the red. There's a little pickup before we get to that, and then we're talking 4 and 5%, as Robbie was saying. We crest at about 2.5 kilometres from home, but they're going to know about it, especially with the amount of work they're putting into this. How much is this diminishing some of the pure sprinters, Robbie, at this moment?
Yeah, this will be starting to burn the legs of the pure sprinters, and that's what guys like Daryl Impey, they want that. They want this to be as fast as possible to really burn those guys and make them use the energy that they would otherwise have for the sprint. So the race now, as they're approaching Montilla from the northern side, and that's the drag up. You could see the town up in front of them. Then they get to the top of the climb, they skirt down to the left, then they get that flat section, and then it's a right-hand turn on the southern side of the town to race up to the finish. So 4 kilometres ago, and you can see the drag up over that rise, but at the moment still the breeze looks to be more into the faces of the riders, keeping that speed low. You're sitting in the peloton, then you actually are getting a pretty nice easy ride compared to the riders on the front. So they're trying to make it really hard, but there's such a slip trim to sit in. It's a pretty easy go for the sprinters at the moment.
How this one is going to pan out is anybody's guess. Who's the chosen son, Sean, for Quick-Step Alpha Vinyl? Evenepoel notwithstanding, or is it all about him, the red jersey? He's in a safe position at the moment.
Yes, well, I think it's all about keeping the red jersey safe here, and we can see Remy Cavagna. He looks around there in the centre of the road, and he's looking for his team leader there, and that's what they want to do. They want to just keep him very much to the very front of the race here, keep him out of that danger. And you can see there, he is making his way up very much to the front line of riders. And yeah, it tells us that the wind, as Robbie said there, it is a little bit of a headwind, because you can see the ones in the front are making a huge effort. But if you can stay in there behind 2-3 teammates, keep a good position, it's a huge advantage.
Starting to drive into it right now, and Ineos Grenadiers wanting to look after Carlos Rodriguez, but also potentially set up Ben Turner for a bit of glory. They've had a taste of success yesterday with Richard Carapaz. Why not today? Here is that climb that continues to unwind here. This is it. So we are not quite at the crest. It comes with about 2.5 kilometres to go. So in about 500 metres time, you can see just at the buildings there, they'll go over a little lip, and then they'll get a bit of impetus, a bit of drive that will take us down to the 2 kilometre marker, and then we start to really grind into the day, and you'll see the speeds will absolutely fall away at the very last. Only 2.9 kilometres from home, but it still feels like a long way to go. Nobody's bitten the bullet just yet, Robbie.
No, nobody seems tempted to go just yet. I mean, it is ramping up, but the pace being set here by Ineos Grenadiers, it's got everybody thinking, well, this is fast enough for the moment. If Movistar come forward with Enric Mas, well, for a climber like him, this is the easy moment to move forward. Here through the middle come Bahrain victorious, and I do expect, as you said before and hoped for, that Fred Wright will be the one to go long. I think he will.
I think he will as well. He's in fourth wheel at the moment. He's got a lead-out man. Couple in front of him as well. Tim Malia's boys wears the tricolore. He's down there in about 10th place. On his shoulder is the green jersey right now of course, Mads Pedersen. He's looking, trying to find space. None available just for the time being. 2.5 kilometres from home. This is teeing up for this nasty turn that I was telling you about. A left-hander coming up that'll take us down to 2. In fact, the road weaving and waving all over the place at the moment. There it is, that right-hander now as part of that essential chicane, you might say. At 2, there will be a right-hander that they will take, and in fact I think they may well have just rolled through it. They have clock adjusting. Getting back up in here is Brian Cocard in the near all red with what looks like a white star upon his back. Meanwhile, Pedersen being guided up here by his team in a green jersey looming large. 1.8 kilometres to go, and suddenly this is going to get to a point where they're going to have to make this final turn. line. It's a 750 metres. They're going to stream down for it. Fred Wright is in a great place at the moment. It's Zambanini who's trying to guide him. Fred's disengaged from his man just for now. And Caden Groves, one of Groves' friends, is Groves himself, just waving off, just trying to tell people to get out of the road because he's coming through. Groves in a great place, in a great mood as well for this one. Nice and aggressive, that's what you want. So is Dan McLeay in the yellow. Camera bike just troubled momentarily as we get a bit of a pinch. And this is Roglic asking for a bit of pace. He's third wheel after that stream of yellow just in front of him. Can he find something out there? Is that Turnison just disengaged? But Roglic is in the frame, that's for sure. So is Kokar with Kilalai absolutely on his shoulder. 1.1 kilometres to go. This is the Flamme Rouge right now. Just after this, they'll stream down for a right-hander. They've all got to be in the best position they possibly can be. Camera bike struggling, bunny hopping all over the place. Now is the turn. This is the turn, but whose turn is it today for glory? And it looks like Roglic is in a fantastic place. This is where the sprint begins. Where is the red jersey? Can he find any kind of time on this? 7% is what they're kicking up to right now, and here it goes. Still Kokar in a very good place in the red jersey, trying to get his way through here. I think that's Stannard trying to make a bit of room for the Tricolor, who's disengaged from his man. Caden Groves is still there, and the others. Leinhardt starts to make a move for Groupama France de Dijon on the right-hand side. Still almost a slow-motion battle, as you can see. And Danny Van Poppel, when's he going to impose himself? Well, he likes to go long. He's got to go long. He's got almost no option whatsoever. Ryan Mullen setting the pace at the moment, but you can see that Mads Pedersen is in a glorious position right now. I think that is Milano on his shoulder. Here we go. Time to dig in. Roglic is there or thereabouts, and it's time to go. And it's Ackermann. Attack from this kind of distance. This would be fantastic for him. Much needed as well. Cathartic, you might say. Can Ackermann make it home? It will be one of his biggest and kindest wins, but I think Pedersen's going to break his heart. Oh, Pedersen comes through. Mats Pedersen, the big green meanie, says this day belongs to one person, and he happens to be wearing the Green Points jersey, and that happens to be me, he says. Oh, that was big. Very big, super finish there by Kokar as well. Fred Wright gets himself up for a decent position. That was fantastic. Brave for Ackermann to really go deep, but he had to go long. And in the end, the story belonged to somebody else. And that somebody else is Mads Pedersen.
He was the out-and-out favourite right from yesterday when people started thinking about today's stage. His team committed to the chase with the other sprinters, but it was Jumbo-Visma that made it so hard at the beginning of that final run up towards the line, and then that long-range effort from Pascal Ackermann. It was brave. It was a very good move. He initially got a gap, but Mads Pedersen, he just said, this is perfect for me. I've got something to aim at. You've burned everybody else off. He just went up through the gears, over the top of the German. And it was a clear win for Mads Pedersen, and the green jersey even firmer on the shoulders of the Dane, and it was daylight second.
Goodness me, Sean, he came home alone there by the looks of things.
Yes, he did, and he was in control, and he was just waiting. And when Ackermann went, of course, he just he tracked him, and he just waited. And when the time came to kick the sprint, he just went away from everybody. And Ackermann there, if he had waited and just hold off and make that sprint a short one, 100 metres, when you go like that, if you have somebody even 2 bike lengths behind you, you're just... You're giving that little bit of slipstream and you're leading out the sprint as such. But we can see Pedersen here. He's just in a great position behind Ryan Mullen, who was leading out the sprint for his sprinter, Van Poppel.
It was wonderful, wasn't it, from the overhead?
Yeah, and it just paused there, and then Ackermann found himself come to the front, and there's the acceleration. But Mads Pedersen reacting immediately. A few got balked in that left-hand corner, so he came through. It looked like Thibaut Pinot was actually up there as well from Groupama FDJ, but look at the gap, 3 lengths. But Pedersen, sneaky look over the shoulder. He says, I can bide my time right into the slipstream. And then Ackermann, well, his legs just went from under him back into the saddle. And Mads Pedersen said, this all seems too easy. If you told me is this straightforward this morning, well, he probably would have believed you anyway, but you've got to go out and do it. And Pedersen, he shows his pedigree. You're not a former world champion for nothing, and he got a finish that was just custom made, you'd have to say. And Brian Coquard, we said he should be good on a finish like that. He was. He's come in for second from a bit far back. Bang on the handlebars for Ackerman. Fred Wright, we think it was from Bahrain, come through. But Ackerman, look at the pain on the face, the teeth bared as Mads Pedersen. He takes another little check down. Does he have anybody's coming? No, there's open road behind him, and it's just gunned on through for yet another stage win. Well, his first stage win, in fact, in this Vuelta. 3 second places so far. He's got his victory.
He has. And just look what it means. You'll be glad to know that my voice box has returned. Paul Bennett out there.
A bit of olive oil, Carlton.
That's what I need. He said, excellent finish from Mads. Carlton Kirby shouting himself hoarse. Glorious. Well, it was me shouting myself hoarse. And just, honestly, what a moment. What a drive. And just what a statement, Sean, as well. This man. Do we give him green now?
I think it's a bit early to give him green, but what a way he won this stage. And when you're in control in the run to the line, and he was very much in control. We could see him there, he was in a perfect position in that final couple of 100 metres. And if you feel you have the legs, you have got a lot to give, well, then you get very confident. And when Ackerman did go, he just tracked him and followed, and we could see there the way he was looking around as well. When he just got Ackerman, when he started his sprint, he was able to look under his arms there to see where everybody else was, and wins comfortably. And yeah, this sort of finish, it's the perfect one for Mads Pedersen.
Terrific finale. And staying safe, Remco Evenepoel. And that was clearly the battle plan today for a man who got himself a few bumps and scratches yesterday, Robbie. He'll be pleased that the day's done.
Yeah, he'll be pleased to just tick off another day, and he knows he's got a big weekend of defending coming up. But the way he's been looking in the mountains, even yesterday after he had that crash, he looked extremely comfortable. He was the strongest in the group. He had it under control. So he'll just be looking to click back into that mode for tomorrow and Sunday and take the red into the rest day.
Super finish and a great winner.
That was a hard-earned stage win, much deserved, not just on the stage itself, but in the entire race after 3 second-place finishes. Mads Pedersen with the stage win. I'm not sure if we're going to hear his race-winning interview just now, are we? No, we'll bring that to you in just a moment. Adam, that was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
It was, apart from I picked Tim Lear and he was absolutely nowhere. So, yeah, great for you guys. But no, I'm joking. That was... As Robbie just said then, there couldn't have been a better finish for Pedersen then. That was perfect for him. Perfect lead out from Ackerman. That was beautiful to watch, wasn't it?
Started my horse thing again.
The most impressive thing with that for me was how Pedersen was on his own from more a K, maybe 1.2K to go, and he just managed to find the result. Of course, everyone was a little bit tired, suffering coming into those corners, but he just found the right wheels, guided himself through, never panicked. And there was a moment with like 400, just after that corner, so 250 metres to go, he was on Ackerman's wheel, and it was like, ooh, he might not, and he just looked back, and I was like, right, easy peasy. And you only look back if you've got fresh legs in a sprint.
I mean, Trek did a good job all day, really, didn't they? But in the end, Mads Pedersen didn't need the help, did he? He timed that all to perfection. It was just brilliant.
I think, given the nature of that finale, there probably weren't many sprinters, if anyone, left to help them by the time they got to 600-700 metres to go. We talked about how it suited them down to the ground because it was so tough. There was gradients towards the finish. I didn't realise it was going to be quite as tough as it was with those gaps opening up. But he clearly just had brilliant legs because he reacted immediately to Pascal Ackerman when he went for UAE Team Emirates. Nobody else seemed to be able to react. I don't think it was a case of not making the right decision at the right time. He was just clearly better. I think Coquard might look back and think, had I been better positioned, I might have come a little bit closer. But the distance was so great that I don't think even better position he would have got the better of Mads Pedersen today.
Coquard was just racing to the team bus, wasn't he? We assume he's leaving at the end of today's stage. We'll find out anyway, but let's get some reaction, first of all, from our stage winner. It's Mads Pedersen.
That's congratulations. The dream scenario for you?
Yeah, definitely. We knew that this final was super good, so the boys did really good today and everyone was focused the whole day. and I'm just happy that I can finally get the win and give the boys back all the work they did so far. So it's really nice for all of us.
Was it good for you also that Jumbo-Visma made it hard at the end and Pascal Ackermann?
Of course, you know, Alex, he delivered me in the last corner, so there was still like 800 meters to go. So it was perfect that they made a good hard tempo, and that Pascal, he jumped early. It means I could, jump with him. But it was a long sprint, you know. To follow Ackermann is also a full sprint, so it was a 330-meter sprint today.
You already had a big lead in the points classification. How much better is it with a stage win?
Oh, it's super nice now. Like, we came here for a stage win, and now we have one. So now we keep fighting to get one more, and it's super nice with a comfortable lead in the points jersey. But it would still have been nice to have Sam here to keep fighting for the jersey. But yeah, we keep fighting for the stages, and then we will see how it goes.
It's lovely to hear him say he still would have liked to have Sam here. I guess you want to beat the very best. We've been talking earlier in this race, Adam, about who would be able to contest that green jersey. He's looking very comfortable in it now, isn't he?
Yeah, he could probably walk through the next couple of stages. Really, he wouldn't have to contest him. He's fine. But he has got a comfortable lead. There's no sprinters that are touching him. Never mind sprinters. I think there's only 2 actual sprinters within the top 10. Mads and one of the others, I forgot who the other sprinter is. The rest is the likes of Remco, Primus, Mass is up there, so he's safe. Let's say that. He's definitely safe, and the way that he's sprinting today, he'll probably go and collect more sprint points on bonus points along the way, and then the 2 other sprint stages that are coming, no doubt he'll grab a few then as well.
It'd be so relieved to have finally taken that victory today, though, because although the green jersey is fantastic, obviously he wants to cross the finish line first, which he's done today. And look at the gap he's got. What's that, 151 points gap back to Mark Soler in second place. Fred Wright's up to third now after his 4th place finish today. But like Adam just said, it's a complete mismatch of GC riders that have been up there in breakaways, sprinters there as well. And also Fred Wright, who's been in breakaways and then sprinted at the end today. So he fancied it, and he did.
Yeah, he certainly did. And what about Pascal Ackermann, though? 2019 is when we saw him doing so well at the Giro d'Italia. I think he took 2 stage wins there, didn't he, and the points jersey. He's not been showing that kind of form, that kind of pace. It was a brilliant showing from him today.
Quite surprising as well on that terrain. I wasn't expecting him to be there whatsoever. He did a brilliant job. He was just a little bit too early. When he came across the line, he was banging his hands on the bars in frustration. But, I mean, you got to take your hat off to him. He took it on. He came into that corner with 300 metres to go. There was riders coming up to try and get on the inside to get in a good position. He saw that, noticed it and accelerated into the corner. Once he did that, it was full commitment from there on in until the finish line. I think if he was just a little bit patient and waited for Mads, who were next to each other, Mads would have then had to go into that corner first. He'd have been on the perfect wheel. But when you're in that situation, which he's rarely been in for quite a couple of seasons now, you almost get overly excited. The patient goes out the window because you're like, I'm at the front, I'm going to win, yay!
Was it that, though? Because it had looked like he timed it to perfection, really. It was just too soon.
Yeah.
You didn't think he lost his head? It didn't look like that.
No, I don't think he lost his head. He just lost his legs in the final there. I mean, he did great to hang on, but once you open up a sprint like that on that terrain, he'll have exploded into that effort as much as he could have given. But once you start to back off, well, not back off, but as soon as you ease off that power, not ease off, but your legs just buckle, basically. There's nothing you can do.
As soon as you back off, not back off. As soon as you not ease off. But no, I mean, he's got a history of doing well in those tough finishes. I remember the Vuelta stage that he won 2-3 years ago, really tough conditions all day. Sam Bennett had been dropped, and it was a really tough finish that day as well, slightly uphill towards the line. And Pascal Ackermann was right up there on that stage, winning it. And he was right up there today. He was shaking his head, though, as he crossed the finish line today. So I do wonder whether he was thinking, I got that slightly wrong.
We are having some technical issues here in the studio, so we may be able to have a little look again at that run in to the finish line, but I'm not sure if you can. You may have to do this on memory. What I really like about a sprint finish like this is having it slightly uphill means you get time to dissect things as they're happening. It's usually so quick, Adam.
They have. This is a shot here. Mads Pedersen moving up on the right-hand side. If you look in the middle, this is the point where Tim Merlier rocks and rolls, and this is it for him. Game over, finish. Look where Brian Cockard is, 4 towards a finish. Pedersen just coming up on his shoulder. Primus is giving him that gap off of Teunisen's wheel just to be able to run at it. Now watch Pedersen. Comes onto the wheel of the I forgot the name, one of the other riders, the team, sorry. He's in a great position now. You've got Ackerman on his wheel, but look how easy he looks, just out the saddle. This point here now, they come around this corner and watch the rush on the left-hand side. People start to move up. Ackerman looks over his shoulder, sees them coming, and he's committed into it. Out of this corner, no looking behind, just full commitment. From behind, from then on in, you can see Fred Wright right at the back, and Cockard, he starts making up ground quickly, but it's just all gone wrong from this point in for everyone else, because Fred Wright is just able to walk away with it, really. Not Fred Wright, Mads Pedersen. I love Fred Wright, obviously.
I know. I do wonder how much the teams will have done recons of today's finish, because it feels like if you knew exactly where those kicks were coming, exactly how steep that run into the line was, that you would have a significant advantage over anybody else, Dan.
It's such a difficult thing within cycling to know every metre of every road on every stage of a Grand Tour, isn't it? So in terms of the GC riders, they would have looked at the mountain stages, perhaps some of the hilly ones. They don't really have a chance to go out and look at a stage finish like today, and the same goes for the sprinters, really. I think it's normally just a case of they send somebody from the team out front, you know, they check the wind conditions out on the course, and then they'll give them a detailed description of how the stage finish looks, because it's often quite different to what you would see on the race profiles, even the detailed ones, and you also never know whether they're going to have narrowed the road at a certain point with barriers, etc. So it's always handy to have team personnel going up the road.
I was shocked how hard that was. From such a long way out, it was a headwind, but we saw all the teams all the way across the road, and it was just a grind for a long time. I mean, there's no wonder Merlier was dropped, bless him. That didn't suit him down to the ground. Don't know why I picked him, but it was just one of those sprints that was... It was almost in slow motion, everything around him. We saw how, with Mads, how much better he was, how, not fresher, but how good he was feeling. He was able to pick where he wanted, move up very easily. The riders that were suffering were just hanging on to wherever they'd be. And for Mads in that situation, or anyone in that situation, it makes your life so much easier, and it builds you with confidence when you're looking around, you're like, one gone. 2 gone. Laters, mate.
Well, I tell you what, we did know that the finish was incredibly tough. Our teams on the ground were messaging in all day saying, I think some of the riders are going to be surprised by this. And Sander was one of our guys giving us the intel. Let's get some race reaction from him.
So after that big sprint by Mads Pedersen today, tomorrow it's all about the GC again when we go to Sierra de la Bandera. A climb already, they rode it in La Vuelta in 2002 when 4-time winner Roberto Heras won. And watch out, Alejandro Valverde won there as well in 2003. Ladies and gentlemen, that is 19 years ago. Juan Ayuso was only one at that time. Last winner there was Rafa Maica in 2017. It's going to be a very special final. The climb is about 22 kilometers, but especially the last 8.5 kilometers, really hard. It'll ramp up to 15%. Average is about 7%. It's going to be a big battle again for our leader in this Vuelta, Remco Evenepoel, and he will be battled by the guys of Jumbo-Visma because they want to be one step up with Primož Roglič once more. It's going to be very interesting tomorrow, all weekend, mountain stages in this Vuelta.
Sander mentions Primož Roglič there, and he started the day as the bookies' 6th favourite, Adam, and there was a bit of scoffing at that in the studio. But Jumbo-Visma were putting in a decent turn in that run into the line, weren't they?
Yes, they were doing a very good turn, almost too good, really. I think if they'd have left that a couple of 100 metres later, Primož would have been at that corner, and we know what Primož's sprint's like on terrain like that. He could have been up there, but with Jumbo-Visma in that situation, they're doing the perfect thing for Primož, keeping it strung out, keeping him out of the way of crashes, but also Remco's nowhere to be seen. In that footage, we cannot see him whatsoever. If there was a crash, if there was splits, OK, there's a 3K rule. But if there's a split, that's a lot of work to do for Remco. So they're doing the perfect thing by keeping Primož safe, but also just putting the pressure on and putting those other riders under pressure, the likes of Remco, the likes of Mas. We saw Mas's team do a brilliant job, but after that, he was nowhere to be seen as well. So what they did was brilliant.
I think Remco's finished about 28th or something, but Primož Roglič was in the top 10 by the end of the stage. This is them ramping up the pressure coming into the Flandre route of 1 kilometre to go. Yeah, I do wonder, like Adam, whether they started a little bit too early at this particular point, because in the end Roglič is left kind of isolated and he gets blocked a little bit later on, where he loses a lot of his speed and momentum. And on a day like today, when you've got that uphill finish, it takes so much strength and power and energy to get your speed back up again. But yeah, interesting that Remco and quite a few of the other GC riders actually were a little bit further back by the time we got to the finish, because, you know, had Roglič had a better run of things towards the line, maybe was able to stay close to Mads Pedersen, and then there was a split. We saw the distance between Pedersen to Coquard, to Ackermann, to Fred Wright. Had Roglič been up there and around there, he could have potentially taken a sort of 5, 10, 15-second gap, depending on where that gap appeared. But from what I've seen so far that I've been able to look at, it appears they've all been given the same time.
Do you know what I liked about that, though, is the fact that Jumbo-Visma were doing the work for Primož Roglič, and we're assuming that he has a lack of form, that it's not his back with which he crashed out of the Tour de France. If they're feeling confident about his chances in a finish like today, that means maybe he could be coming back into form, or they're certainly still backing him in a finish like that.
Yeah.
Well, give me something to hold on to.
Yeah, I'm going to give you something to hold on to. Those finishes for Primož are his bread and butter. He can do them brilliantly. Form, in terms of what he's got so far, I think he's pretty much what he's got from what we've seen. It might improve a little bit. He might have a really good day. But Primož can do those finishes day in, day out. It's a 2-minute effort where he has to go really hard, and we know how good he is at him. It would be, I'm not going to say it's easy for him, but the positioning with his team, making everything so much easier for him, I don't think we can read too much into it, sadly, Orla.
Well, I would disagree. Because they've got Mike Teunissen there, and I think the fact that they put everything into Primož Roglič today might not necessarily have been just for the aim of the stage win, but to try and get some time back on GC. So it clearly means that they still believe only in his that. I just think it was a great finish for Teunissen.
I agree when you speak, Dan, just not with Orla. Yeah. Anyway, let's get some more race reaction, shall we? Here's Dan McClay.
Okay. Jeffrey. Dan McClay. How was it, the sprint?
Yeah, it was a hard finish like expected. I was again in a good place with Clément, but yeah, I think I missed a little bit in the legs, but also I went on the left side and I got completely stuck behind the guy from DSM. I mean, yeah, it's just racing. He had done his job. He was going backwards, and I just got stuck there on the fence. But yeah, anyway, I think I missed the legs to go with Pedersen and so on. So. It is what it is, and we'll try again.
No regrets, he was too strong.
Yeah, of course, like, can always do something better, but I think even if I did it perfect, it was difficult in a finish like this, so yeah, no regrets really. Yeah.
Could do better, but no regrets. Well, Adam has made his way over to the touch screen. You're going to go through that sprint finish for us. Adam, take it away.
I am indeed. We've obviously seen this a few times now, but this, I think, is around about 600 metres to go. We've got Pedersen here, we've got Ackermann here. I think that's Brian Coquard down there. Dan McClay is one of these two riders. I'm trying to look out for the other riders, but can't quite make the art. I think that's Danny Van Poppel there in the middle. But this is the point here. They bend round this corner and watch here what Ackermann does. You can see some of the riders here. This rider, especially from BH, that's the point there. You can't really see, sorry, but he sees these starting to come. He doesn't want them getting the inside line. He started to accelerate. This is the point where he is just fully committed now on the wheel. Sadly, after this, we can't really see what's happening behind too much, but we'll see Coquard come into shot in a minute. But look at the gap on Pedersen, not panicking, looks behind there, starts to get the run at the wheel, and he's like, right, here we go. This is what I do. I'm going to win this. The only thing I'd say with Mads there, different to Ackermann, is Ackermann came out that corner so hard and put down all the power. Once he'd done that 10-second effort, he started to tie up. Mads, he didn't accelerate like a lunatic out that corner. He took his time, ran at the wheel, looked over his shoulder. I'm all clear, I've got time to do this. And he was patient, but that takes, in that scenario, so much experience in those efforts to get it right, and he's the master of it.
Yeah, such a cool, calm finish in the end. It was a hot day in the hottest region of Spain, but Mads Pedersen was the rider on fire on stage 13. Eurosport viewers, you're off for a quick break, but stay with us on digital. We've got plenty more to chat about in just a moment. We've been talking about heat, and it's relevant to a certain project that's being run essentially by Luis Angel Mate, the rider who's local to yesterday's stage, I understand. He has pledged to plant 100 trees before this Vuelta started, and then an extra tree for every kilometre that he will spend in the breakaway, which is quite remarkable, Dan. We applaud, we fully support this kind of a project, and I guess are just so sad that it has to happen.
Well, exactly, yeah. I mean, he lives local, like you said, to yesterday's stage. He said he doesn't know how many times he's done that final climb in training because he's done it so many. But he also pointed out that it would look very different once we got to yesterday's stage finale on that climb to the previous time in 2013 because of the forest fires that they had, I think, just over 12 months ago at this point. So, yeah, great that he's making awareness as much as planting the tree, just making us all aware of what's gone on over there. And just helping to get it back to where it was. But obviously, whenever you have that sort of an incident, it's not going to be back where it was for so many years.
The team is doubling the amount as well, I think. So however many kilometres, however many trees it is, his team will double that. And I think the Vuelta is as well. So there'll be hopefully an enormous amount of trees. Just let them go in the breakaway. Yeah,
it is great to get us all talking about it. And I guess the heat and the corresponding issue of climate change have been a big issue in cycling of late. There's been a big debate on social media about just how ungreen the sport is, which is ironic given the kind of transport that we use, essentially. Adam.
Yeah, well, I know the sponsors of this race, Skoda, we see the commissaires cars, they've all gone to electric now, so they're using electric cars. But as you say, there's so many vehicles involved with bike riding, the travel, all that kind of stuff. It's so difficult, and it would change so much if they had to go to electric cars now. I don't think that technology's there, but
for the distance that they have to travel.
Exactly, and how many cars there are. But they are making differences, the litter zones, everything like that, in terms of looking after our planet. Cycling is doing what it can to try and make things better, but it's difficult.
Question is it, though? Because we started the day before the stage talking about the long transfers, talking about the foreign Grand Departs, which we all celebrate because it's bringing the sport to new fans, and we tend to get really excitable fans whenever we take a Grand Tour somewhere else. But that all adds to the kilometres that the race has to cover.
Yeah, it does. I mean, so I think they could do an awful lot to try and improve the sport. Like you said, it's like ironic, really, that the most environmentally friendly form of transport turned into a sport is probably one of the least environmentally friendly sports because of the number of teams, because of the number of vehicles, because of the transfers, like you said. And if we take this Vuelta as an example, not only did we have the foreign Grand Partida in the Netherlands, which involved flights for everybody and all the travel of the vehicles, etc. But then another one on the second rest day of the race within Spain. So that's just down to course design and not following an even route around the country and just having to go 900 kilometres from one side of it to the other, which you just don't need to do.
I think the whole distance that these Grand Tours cover within the countries themselves is maybe a very simple thing to be looked at. And we will be looking, however, at stage 14 in just a moment. Welcome back to our viewers on Eurosport. We've just been discussing the initiative by Luis Angel Mate to plant trees. 100 trees initially, and then 1 tree for every kilometre that he's in the breakaway. We had terrible forest fires near his home area yesterday. I think actually we can hear a little interview now from Angel Mate. Let's have a listen.
Luis, yesterday we saw some devastating pictures, images going up to Peñas Blancas. This is your mission in La Vuelta a España. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and your impressions about yesterday's climb?
Yes, the last year, 1 year ago, we lived one of the most important catastrophes of our history in Sierra Bermeja, in my home. One area with very big barriers, ecological barriers, and this wildfire burned more than 10,000 hectares. I think it's important to know that we are all the responsibility to be care of our planet. In this moment, I think this is the moment, is the most important thing, and we need to know that. For that, I want to do something, and the Vuelta, one year after this wildfire, is the best show care to know everybody that we can do a good repopulation.
Yeah, actually we saw it yesterday in Peñas Blancas. How can we add us to your mission? Is it possible? I mean, you are the only one that can go in a breakaway, but maybe the rest of us can help you in some way.
No he oído, Laura.
How can we help to add our compromise to your mission? How can we?
I think everyone need to know that, yeah, we can say the responsibility is the government or the big enterprise or the others, but everybody have a responsibility in this case. The global warming, the climatic crisis is the most important thing we have now, the most important problem, and it's our responsibility to leave a good legacy to the future generation. And everybody can do something, is a lot of.
Angel Mate there, thank you for drawing attention to this incredibly important issue. It's important to note as well that there had been wildfires near today's start time, and just along from the finish time, La Ronda recorded the hottest temperatures ever recently, 47.6 degrees. Let's look ahead to stage 14 then, Adam. What can you tell us about that? We've had a bit of a stalemate, really, haven't we, in the general classification in the last couple of days?
Yeah, not a lot is climbing. It's a fairly simple stage with an odd finish. This is an important day for Jay Vine tomorrow. The last climb is oddly split into two. I think the first part of it is only a category 2. That's 10 kilometres. There's like a 3.5k section in the middle, which is almost downhill slightly. And then I think you've got another 8 kilometres up to the summit of where the final is. For Jay Vine, it's important because there's mountain points on offer, big ones with a category 2 and a category 1, but also for the stage, this is important in terms of that 3-kilometre section. If someone attacks early, gets a little bit of a gap maybe on that flat part, a chance to recover and then go again, they can really use that to their advantage. And you can also blow your lights out on that part as well by going too hard at the bottom. So it will be interesting. It's just odd that they've split those two climbs, that one climb, into two.
Oh, well, it's, again, worst thing as a non-climber is like, oh, King of the Mountains, oh, it's just flat and then uphill again. Yeah. Brilliant. But yeah, there's so many of the stages look so similar in terms of the summit finishes, like not uphill. That much in the way. Yes. Yeah, big thing like that on the end of the profile.
Bit of a run.
What
yeah,
I mean,
that's familiar.
Paula, is that there's not that much climbing before they get
Proud
there.
of that one, weren't you?
I think we've got one categorised climb. If you lump the last two into one, we've got one categorised climb before that, but we haven't had many stages yet where there's lots of climbing to do before you even get to a summit finish. We've got another stage the following day which looks very similar again, like that, towards the finish. It's another summit finish. It is high altitude in Sierra Nevada, but I am looking forward to the last week as well, where we've got the multiple climbs in the same day, because I think tomorrow is going to be great to watch on that final climb, but it could look very similar to the ones that we've already had, because we know what the form of everyone is.
A familiar rhythm to the climbs and a familiar rhythm to our general classification podium prediction within the studio.
We're doing this
because
still.
Dan Lloyd, I have to say, I have to point out you got first pick today, so yes, you did go for Mads Pedersen, but I did declare yesterday I was never hanging my hat on Mads again after he disappointed me several times.
Ackerman and Fred Wright were still available, just to let you know.
They were. Who did I go for again? Danny Van Poppel, though, he finished top 5, didn't he? Adam, what went wrong again?
Everything. I mean, pretty much
It's been
everything.
a long year for you, mate.
It has been a long year. It's hard to keep this form going, this winning form.
So we can see, yeah. I mean, it's a thing of memory by now. I wouldn't call it this winning form. I would say that winning form, referring to something that happened in the past.
An English class here. You know what I mean?
We're not in cycling prediction class either. Anyway, just 2 days at time, the Tour of Britain will be live on Discovery Plus and GCN Plus, where we will bid adieu to Richie Porte, because we're not in an English class. He'll be clipping in for his final professional race, and we will be back with you the same time, same place for stage 14 of the Vuelta tomorrow. And it is the middle weekend of this race after a bit of a stalemate in the GC battle. Will the gloves come off? Let's hope so. We'll be here tomorrow to find out.